The sword fell to the ground with a clang. The wounded man said, breathing heavily, "Not bad. I never thought anyone could defeat the descendant of dragons, Carls, the Knight of Light." Carls, his armor spattered with blood, towered over him, swinging his sword. The wounded man in black continued, "But you're too late. Even if you kill me, the demons from the continent will arrive here soon. And the whole earth will be washed with blood," he finished, looking angrily at the knight and stretching his hand forward. Laughing, the enraged emperor continued, "Everything will still be as I, Exceltrian, planned." But before he could finish, Carls struck him with his sword. The Knight of Light looked at his fallen enemy and said, "It doesn't matter. No matter what you do to destroy this world, I will still save it." The emperor, covered in blood, lay dead at his feet. Finally, after defeating the mad Emperor Exceltrian, Carlos fights back against the hordes of demons threatening to destroy the world. Soon the hope of victory began to fade, for the demons were strong, they had huge claws and wings, and they mercilessly attacked people. But under the leadership of Carls, the Knight of Light, humanity prepared for a long and difficult war against the demons. This is the name of this story: The Great War of Humans Against Demons. A dark-haired man in a suit read from his phone. His eyes sparkled, his cheeks were flushed, and his mouth was slightly open with interest. I've reread it several times already, but the prologue always grabs my attention, especially the scene where Carls killed the Emperor, the man said enthusiastically to himself as he scrolled through the story on his phone. The Great War of Humans and Demons is a unique work in which the main character, Carls, appears very rarely, but his arrival is always most welcome, and the writer's attention is focused more on world-building than on the hero's great deeds. The dark-haired man quickly typed into his phone, "Dear author, please tell me when the sequel is coming out. I've already read the last chapter." As he watched his message load, he thought about how much he loved novels set in that setting. The man put the phone on the table and slid back in his chair, raising his head to the ceiling. He begged the author to write the next chapter as soon as possible. After all, he sent him a donation of $10. A reader was looking at the sponsor ratings on his phone and wondering if the author wasn't writing because there weren't enough donations. The man moved closer to the table with the computer and picked up the mouse, deciding to finish the work quickly so he could return home. But he was distracted again, looking at the phone with a surprised exclamation and opening his eyes wide. It was truly unexpected to receive a message from the author, he thought, looking at the notification with impatience. Grabbing the phone with both hands, the man wondered if it was really so nice to receive my message and donation. Suddenly, joy overwhelmed the young man. Maybe the author would even share with him information about the release of the next chapter. He seemed to glow as he thought about it. Finally, the black-haired man decided to open the message. It said that it was dedicated to Bang Kwang-suk, who loved the novel The Great War of Humans Against Demons the most. The man looked at the phone in horror, trying to understand where he got his name from. Then something clicked, and everything around was covered in darkness. Ban turned around trying to understand what had happened. Suddenly the lights went out. His phone lit up brightly, and a voice came from somewhere. "My strength is leaving me, and therefore I will be brief." The story ends. He said that he couldn't stay in this world any longer. His magic was running out, and he had to write with the last of it. Panicked thoughts raced through the man's head about who was speaking and what was wrong with his phone. He tried to point at the screen, but it only glowed brightly. The world around him seemed to split in two, and the phone glowed a brighter purple light. Ban had no idea what was happening, but the voice continued. "That's why I came up with a different way. You know the world of the Great War of Humans Against Demons better than anyone, so I decided to leave the fate of this world in your hands." The voice was saying that he was using the last of his magical powers to cast the mystical Reincarnation spell when a wind started to blow around him, and the papers lying on the table flew in all directions. The last sentence in this dialogue is a spell that will reincarnate you. Please do everything in your power to save this world. Ban's hair was completely disheveled. He did not understand why he had to save this world. The voice said that it didn't know who exactly he would be reborn as, but if he saved the world, he would be able to return back. A round seal with strange signs appeared under the man's feet. He tried to shout to the stranger, but it was all useless. Ban pressed the glowing screen of his smartphone randomly, but it didn't respond, and the voice uttered the last words, "May the God of Light bless you." The reader kept trying to find out from the author of the story what he was trying to do to him. The man's face contorted with panic. He decided that maybe if he donated even more, everything would stop, but everything around him went dark. Ban came to his senses in the huge hall to the shouts of the crowd. "Long live the Emperor of the Great Rune! His face was covered in sweat. He couldn't believe what had happened. The people all praised Emperor Exceltrion, but he looked at them in horror. The soldiers around him spoke of how His Majesty had brought them peace. And Ban realized that he had truly been reborn in the body of Emperor Exceltrion in the Great War of Humans against Demons. The Rune Empire is the strongest on the continents of Irath and Exceltrion. Its emperor looked like a handsome man with golden hair and blue eyes, but also the main villain in the novel, the antagonist Khalsa, covered in the blood of his victims. People with dragon blood are rarely born on the continent. They are called descendants of the dragon. And that was exactly what Exceltrion was, fury burning in his eyes as he fought. Unfortunately, he suffered from madness, which was not at all rare for the descendants of the dragon. Excel tried to deal with this by often finding himself at the bottom of the bottle. But this did not help to drown out the voices in his head that demanded blood. In the end, his madness prevailed, and he led the entire world to destruction. Fear gripped him as he sat on the throne. Ban was in this body, and his subjects continued to shout gratitude to him. When the man was finally about to leave, an important official approached him, and, bowing, reported that the infantry would now be sent off to war on the demonic continent, followed by the Black Dragon Knights and a supply caravan. The man tried to understand what was happening and asked him if they were really going to the demonic continent. Looking at the emperor with burning eyes, the minister confirmed that the army should have already reached the Wall of Tears and that the clash with the demons would soon begin. Ban stood with his back to him. He remembered this episode word for word. The mad emperor sent his army to the demonic continent. Memories flashed through his head. This happened in the 12th chapter of the novel. The mad emperor invades the continent, and for this the demons will soon mount a counterattack on the empire. Horror gripped the man. He realized that he was somewhere at the beginning of the Great War of Humans against demons. Then a thought suddenly came into Ban's head. He thought that the author asked him to do everything to save the world, and that in order to return to his world, he needed to save this one. Turning to the soldiers, the newly crowned emperor realized that the destruction of the human world had begun with this fateful military campaign, which would provoke the invasion of demons and a confrontation with Karls. Determination lit up his eyes. Ban had to stop this campaign of conquest to survive. There is also another compelling reason to stop the campaign. This official, Enpika. This serious man was a real demon with an evil grin. Send a messenger immediately with my order to turn the troops around and call off the campaign, the emperor exclaimed, grabbing his sword for assurance. Enpika tried to question him again to understand what was happening. Are you trying to say something? Do you have reason to believe I shouldn't stop the campaign? The man smirked as the minister tried to persuade the emperor to continue the campaign. After all, he had prepared for it so carefully and for so long. But Excel claimed that it was the minister who proposed and prepared the campaign, and also slipped him a document to print when he was in a drunken stupor, and Pinka looked at His Majesty in shock. Having repeated his order to stop the campaign, the emperor said that he would send the official to his own people, and his blade flashed in the sun. The minister looked at the sword in horror and claimed that the demons were not his people. You said that. I didn't talk about demons, the man said, and swung his sword, fatally wounding the minister. The soldiers watched this massacre with fear, and Pinka fell to his knees, blood flowing from his wound, covering everything around him. Exceltrion looked at his body with a mad and merciless gaze, his sword covered in blood. Inside, Ban couldn't believe what had happened. The thought that he had killed a man horrified him. Streams of blood flowed down the stairs. The man tried to understand how this happened. He just wanted to scare the general. Breathing heavily from what he had experienced, the emperor examined his sword, trying to find an explanation for why his body was not acting as he wanted. The only thought that came to his mind was that he was thinking, but it was Exceltrion who took action. It was as if this body contained more than just Ban's consciousness. Does this mean that Excel's consciousness is still here? While he was thinking about it, dark smoke rose from the spilled blood. A monster with gray skin, huge wings, claws and horns appeared in place of the dead official. It roared and asked the emperor how he knew about it. Ban thought to himself that he was omniscient because he had read the novel. He even wanted to show the phone with the text. But out loud he said, "I am omniscient because I am the emperor," and raised his blade. The demon gnashed his huge fangs in anger. He growled loudly and threatened, stretching out his paw with sharp claws and attacking Excel. The soldiers suddenly rushed to the defense, standing between him and the demon. One of them cut the enemy down, and there was even more blood around. The soldier turned around trying to figure out if His Majesty was hurt and was about to defend him, while the other knight tried to understand how the Prime Minister became a demon. The emperor angrily called his defenders to silence and, pushing them aside, stepped forward. His blue eyes were blazing with anger, and inside Ban was shocked. He just wanted to ask them to leave. And this emperor was saying that he would execute them. The soldiers fell silent. This man really frightened them. Excel squinted as he looked at the defeated demon. The wounded monster felt its strength draining away. The emperor mercilessly ordered him to be interrogated and find out who his accomplices were. If he did not talk, he would be killed. The knights obeyed him unquestioningly. I am confiscating the prime minister's property for the benefit of the crown. And you go there and search his house. To finish the job, you must execute his entire family, including his parents and children. The man continued to give instructions. The soldier agreed with doubt. Not daring to contradict the emperor, Ban pursed his lips. He couldn't control his speech and spoke as if Exeltrian would speak. His will was strong, but controlling the emperor took a lot of effort. Trying to downplay his cruelty, Ban said that the real prime minister was most likely already dead, and the knights immediately confirmed that contact between him and his family had recently ceased. Then he decided to postpone their execution and keep an eye on them. His subjects were truly glad that they didn't have to kill innocent people. Finally left alone, Ban gave in to his feelings and grabbed his head, completely exhausted. Sitting down on the huge imperial bed, he thought that if he couldn't restrain Exeltrian, the history of the great war of humans against demons would repeat itself. The country will become a real villain and turn into the bloody empire of Rune. And he, the main antagonist, will lead all of this. Ban knew this would indeed be a worst-case scenario. Now, realizing how many problems there were around him, the man screamed in panic that he would like to be reborn as someone other than the Mad Emperor, for example, the Knight of Light Carls, the main character. But it was beyond his power to change anything now. Ban tried to calm down and think that, fortunately, he did not yet feel the mental illness of the dragon's descendants that the Emperor would suffer from. As he thought, he fiddled with his fingers and recalled the whole day. Exeltrian, the demon Enpic. He really got into a novel. Perhaps the author who sent him here was actually a mage from this continent. Ban imagined him wearing a pointed hat, holding a staff, surrounded by the most powerful magic. He kept wondering why the voice was asking him to save this world, since he didn't even know the plot of the novel to the end. The Emperor's face suddenly changed, as if he were a different person, and with an evil smile he said that a book about reincarnation and travel between worlds was in the old Imperial Library. Ban winced, regaining control. Worry evident on his face, he realized he hadn't read it. But the man's gaze became stern again, and he continued to talk about how he had read this book and whether the author had descendants. This didn't last long. Ban became himself again and lowered his head. This scared him a lot. It was truly terrifying to share my consciousness with the Mad Emperor. The only thing that calmed him down was that his consciousness was still stronger. Grabbing his hair in an attempt to come up with a plan to get out of here, he was glad that he had at least stopped the key event, the march to the demon continent. Closing his eyes, Ban realized that he was completely confused by so much information, but one goal was clear: to save this world. A fair-haired man sat in the vast imperial chambers. He was increasingly upset by the memories of the novel. He did not remember the ending, and was in the body of the doomed antagonist. Suddenly, someone disturbed the Emperor, saying that Sir Blumhartz was requesting an audience. He perked up, remembering the hero who was from the Order of the White Dragon. In the novel, the White Dragon Knights are the Emperor's personal guard, and Blumhartz is its leader. Even when everyone turned their backs on the Emperor, Blumhartz remained loyal to him until his last breath and died fighting demons. The man was angry again. For him, this man was a stupid old man who only knew slogans about justice and honor. Axel's face was distorted by an evil grin. He would bury this man if he started bothering him just because he once taught him fencing. When Blumhartz walked in, Ban saw a stern old man with medals on his chest, gray hair down to his shoulders, a beard, and all covered in scars. The knight greeted him, dropping to one knee. "An interesting way to attempt on my life. You want to get rid of me because I'm going crazy," said the Emperor. The old man began to apologize, claiming that he was truly angry about the assassination attempt on the Prime Minister. But Excel reminded him that he had killed him himself, although the Knights of the Black and White Dragons were supposed to do this. Bowing his head, Blumhartz understood that as the commander of the White Dragons, he had no excuses. Ban knew it wasn't his fault, and he looked at the knight with sadness, thinking that he was busy guarding the northern border all year round, where he served impeccably and should have been rewarded. The man really wanted to thank the knight, but the Emperor, gritting his teeth, nevertheless acknowledged Blumhartz's merits, despite his advanced age. The old man was grateful to His Majesty for the praise, and rising from his knees, he admitted that the emperor had changed greatly. "I haven't changed. I just decided this time that I won't let the voices in my head do anything," answered Excel. The knight didn't understand what kind of voices were bothering the emperor. Then His Majesty confessed that he was descended from a dragon race, which incredibly shocked the old commander. He remembered how the emperor, with madness in his eyes, said that he would personally execute those who mentioned the dragon race. Standing over a mountain of dead bodies, Excel threatened that everyone who did not listen to him would become like them. The soldiers could only obey. Blumhardt remembered the horror with which he watched this scene. The mad emperor, covered in blood, angrily shouted at his subjects. Ban grimaced, the memory making him sick. The knight admitted that he had been searching for a cure for this problem for the past 3 years. And lowering his head, he repented that he did not dare to report this, since His Majesty had forbidden raising this topic. "But if they give him a little more time," the captain continued. But then an idea occurred to the emperor. All the scientists of the empire worked on a cure for the emperor's hereditary madness. But, unfortunately, it was all in vain. Ban smiled. But they didn't know about the future of this world. It's still possible. The commander had absolutely no idea what the man was talking about and just looked at him in shock. Exeltrion was the strongest of the dragon descendants of his time. He even fought against Carls without armor or weapons, thought Ban, clenching his hand into a fist. He wanted to laugh. He clearly remembered how it was highlighted in the plot. The emperor was filled with joy. Now he knew how to suppress the dragon's heredity and change the course of the romance. Blumhardt tried to understand how His Highness knew this, but Ban could only answer that the night had come at a good hour. And then he asked to call Senator Duran, for whom there were urgent orders. The old man bowed and went to carry out the order. While stretching his hand, the emperor thought about the fact that it was now the year 427, according to the dragon calendar, and that according to the plot, Excel's death would happen in 433. A novel flashed before his mind, the chapter of which was called The Great War of Humans Against Demons, year 433, according to the imperial dragon calendar. He still had about 7 years left in him, Ban thought, taking off his jacket. During this time, he was obliged to gain control over Excel's consciousness and suppress the dragon's heredity in him. It is also important to avoid conflict with Carls, who will eventually expose Excel's plans and turn against him, siding with humanity. During their fight, the emperor asked, "I administer justice by exterminating demons. How do you justify your rebellion against me?" To this, the Knight of Light replied, "You have brought the people to the brink of destruction, and you still dare to call it justice." Carls claimed that he had gone mad because he was the descendant of a dragon, which angered the emperor greatly. His pride was wounded and he rushed into battle shouting threats. And so the end catastrophic event occurred, which destroyed everything. Banu wanted to cry from these memories. As he paced the room, the man thought that he didn't know when or how madness would take over when meeting Carls, and the best option would be to avoid meetings altogether until a way to suppress the dragon inheritance appeared. It is unknown how the plot will change with his rebirth. Having taken up the blade, Ban was worried that he would have to kill demons to prevent the destruction of the world. The Emperor's gaze became firm again. Everything was simple. "We just need to find some way to deal with the demons," thought Ban, while Excel decided that he would immediately cut them all down and clench the tip of the sword in his fist. Blood was running down his hand. Ban froze in shock. The Mad Emperor must be crazy to be clutching the blade of a dagger in his palm, he decided, holding his injured hand. At this time, Old Man Blumhardt walked quickly along the corridor, thinking that His Majesty was with them again. His stern face sparkled with happiness. He was glad that Excel was again as clear-minded as before. Closing his eyes, he thanked the God of Light for hearing his prayers and giving the Empire hope. In such an elevated mood, the knight walked about the Emperor's business. When Sir Duran stood in the way, greeting the master of the northern borders. "How fortunate that we met. I was just looking for you. His Majesty wants to see you," Blumhardt exclaimed. Sir Duran was truly surprised by this. He was just on his way to the Emperor, because he heard about the reprisal against the Prime Minister and thought that His Majesty had become his former self. The stern knight looked with joy at the minister, who was hoping for a productive conversation. On the way they continued to talk, Duran did not believe that he would finally be able to tell the Emperor about state affairs, but Blumhardt did not let him get too inspired and advised him to be patient. When the two finally stood before the Emperor, Senator Duran immediately dropped to one knee in greeting. Excel ordered the man to stand up and asked if he was aware of today's events. "Of course, I couldn't even imagine that the Prime Minister could turn out to be a demon after all. You personally appointed him to this position." Sir Duran, the head of the Senate and one of the most powerful magicians in the Empire, happily answered. The Emperor looked at him angrily. I see you still love to twist words. But this didn't upset Duran at all. He just laughed and asked how he could help. After looking closely at the magician, Excel said that he needed to visit one place alone, and while he was gone, he would take his place and hide his absence. Blumhart's frightened voice came from behind him, begging His Highness not to travel incognito, not understanding why anything should change when everything in the Empire was finally stable. The Emperor explained that the purpose of his journey was to suppress the dragon's heredity. Have you really found a way? Sir Duran was very surprised when the Emperor agreed. While Excelsior and the Knight were arguing about who would go on the campaign, the magician began to think seriously. Finally, he replied that he was capable of replacing the Emperor for no more than a month. Blumhart turned around, expecting the Senate leader to be on his side, but Duran said there would be a lot of rumors if anyone suspected. That's more than enough, Ban agreed with a grin. The agitated knight tried to persuade the Emperor to take some guards. Looking at the old man with a crazy look, Excel refused. Very few people were a threat to me on this continent, he asserted, becoming even angrier. Ban really thought he was the mad emperor. Falling to his knees, Blumhart did not retreat. His only request was to take at least one guard, he begged, hitting his head on the floor. The emperor was speechless. He only looked at the knight with irritation. This scene touched Bana incredibly. He didn't remember that in the novel Sir Blumhart was such a warm-hearted person, it was impossible to refuse him. When Excel finally got ready, he was met at the gate by the gatekeeper. The emperor seemed to be impatient to see him out and he scared the guy to the point of trembling. Ban tried to apologize in his mind. Duran came out to meet him with a bundle of clothes, saying that His Majesty had better change his clothes if he wanted to remain unrecognized. The bundle contained glittering armor, which surprised Excel, but the magician explained that these were the late emperor's belongings, for traveling incognito so that he would be mistaken for an ordinary mercenary. The emperor began to take off his clothes. When it came to his pants, he froze. The thought flashed through his head that it was strange to change clothes in front of everyone. But turning around, Ban realized that no one would think of looking at the emperor's body. Everyone around turned away and closed their eyes. The doubts and shame of a modern man fought within him with the spontaneity of a fantasy emperor. The emperor won and asked Duran to help him get dressed. Suddenly, His Majesty remembered the guard that Sir Blumhart had imposed on him. But the minister was informed that the guard would come to the gate. Footsteps and the clink of armor were heard nearby. Duran wanted to say something else about the guard, but a smiling girl in full armor, with a sword and shield, approached them, her chestnut hair tied in a ponytail. She apologized and said that she was looking for His Highness. Excel turned around and glared at the female knight. She turned completely red and shuddered, looking at the man in shock. This is Sir Blumhart's daughter, Senator Durant finally finished, and the girl was horrified when she realized that the man in front of her was completely naked. Her hair stood on end and the shield fell from her hands. Her scream echoed through the castle. In panic, she covered her face with her hands, trying to understand why the emperor was naked. Ban also had a feeling of horror in his mind. He turned around to look at old Duran, who had a smile on his lips. The man was indignant. Why did the magician only now say that Blumhart sent his daughter? At this time, already dressed, Excel was finally able to answer the girl that he was changing. The whole Red Knight apologized for seeing His Majesty without clothes. The emperor was more interested in the skills of Blumhart's daughter. Finally pulling herself together, the girl looked at the emperor with confidence and assured him that her strength was equal to the lowest-ranking knight of the White Dragon. Her fortitude amazed Ban, but the emperor looked at her with a grin. He was not at all surprised. She was the daughter of the leader of the knights. The man wondered what the lesser knight of the White Dragon was capable of. Words alone are not enough for me, Excel said menacingly, drawing his blade, which made the girl opposite her grip on the shield tighten. The emperor shouted that he must test her skills and attacked with magic. These words did not seem to frighten the lady at all. She only drew her sword, preparing for a fight. While Ban tried to stop the crazy owner of the body, he thought that he could just give a compliment. The fire sword strike was aimed straight at the girl, but she managed to take his magic on her shield. Her sword also burst into flames and, concentrating, she rushed into a counterattack. Their blades crossed, the emperor's huge sword and the girl's small rapier. Excel did not expect this at all. Finally exhaling, Ban was glad that she was able to answer. Smiling menacingly, the emperor said, "Good, I see you have mastered the basic techniques." The knight could only thank him, looking fearlessly at Excel. After asking her name, the man continued to press on the girl's thin sword, and from such efforts her hands began to tremble and she introduced herself. "Renard Blumhart, Putting away his sword, the Emperor repeated the name. He promised that when they returned from their journey, he would knight her as the White Dragon, while Buck thought that it would be great to become friends, just like in the popular anime. Renard dropped to one knee in gratitude, sheathing her blade. A worried Duran, looking at this, asked not to torment Blumhart's daughter. The Emperor replied that everything was not so bad and took the last piece of armor from the senator's hands. The magician was still in a cheerful mood. He was ready to replace Excel during his absence, but all this glory was not needed by His Majesty. This had no effect on the good-natured senator at all. He only apologized for saying too much. The gatekeeper asked where they were heading, and the man replied, "Somewhere closer to the bloody forest." The seals at the gate glowed with a golden light, and the gatekeeper said that he would move them to the Klee Gorge, to a small hut. Bowing, he warned the Emperor to be careful, as the bloody forest was the territory of another state. Duran handed His Majesty a bag and said that it contained money for the journey. Ban did not refuse. The Emperor immediately headed towards the brightly shining gates, urging Renard on. The girl shuddered. She was not going to leave the man alone, and she ran after him, shouting for him to wait. They came out into the forest. It was night all around. Only the reflections of magic dispersed the darkness. Excel tossed the bag of money to the night girl, who was curious as to where it had ended up. This surprised the Emperor. He did not think that Renard did not know about the bloody forest, but she said that she had only heard that it was in the lands of the elves. This is territory contested between elves and barbarians, Ban clarified, looking around. Also in this forest are emerald ruins, in which the elixir of the ancients is hidden, Ban recalled. That's where they would be heading, the Emperor said, surprising the girl, who didn't think they would be looking for ruins. But the man confirmed that it was there that the artifact was located that could suppress the dragon's inheritance. Renard tried to explain that the ruins were usually teeming with monsters and traps, and that the two of them couldn't handle it. Turning away, the Emperor walked forward. He didn't have time to explain everything to the girl. He was going to catch the elf and find out the location of the ruins. Renard has the characteristics of blood energy key, Ban suddenly remembered. Excel didn't like that the girl talked too much, and he ordered her to find an elf, since their family had strong blood key. From the novel, the reader remembered that multicolored key cells are responsible for different abilities, and orange ones gave good searching abilities. The orange key cells were the ones that dominated Renard's power. This color of magic surrounded her and burned in her eyes. However, the girl looked very guilty, and admitted that she had never tracked elves, and the distance was great. This answer angered the Emperor. He was going to burn down the entire forest to find even one elf. A shudder ran through the girl's body. She wondered why her father had sent her with this terrible man. But then the magic suddenly activated, and she stopped His Majesty and screamed that a living creature was rapidly approaching them. A cry for help was heard. Renard and the Emperor looked back. A little elf ran towards them with tears in his eyes, chased by a crowd of huge green orcs. Their eyes glowed in the dark and drool dripped from their huge fangs. Ekel was not at all scared, unlike the girl who recognized the orc barbarians. This scene really shocked Renard. She didn't think that orcs hated elves so much that they even killed children. Magic flowed around the Emperor. He was glad that the elf himself came to them and stepped forward. Clutching his chest, he was completely engulfed in magical light. He had no more strength to restrain himself. His face twisted with anger. The dragon blood was getting out of control. In fear, Renard extended her hand, trying to stop the man. But rushing forward with a mad laugh, he did not hear her at all, and saw only the prey in front of him. The small fair-haired elf boy didn't understand anything at all, and the girl asked Excel not to touch him at least. The Emperor, looking like a wild beast shrouded in bloody magic, shut her up. In just a second, he flashed through the crowd of orcs and beheaded them all. The bloody road stretched behind him, and Excel rushed forward, his eyes flashing. All these bodies and blood made him laugh, enveloped in red magic. The remaining orcs surrounded the man, but his magic only grew stronger. He threatened to leave no trace of them. Axes flashed in the air. Covered in blood, the man didn't even seem to notice them. However, the magic did not allow the weapons to even come close, and they bounced back with a ringing sound. This made Excel laugh, and he rushed forward and growled, "Did you really think you could touch me with such a primitive weapon?" With bloody palms, he grabbed two orcs by the heads. With a mad face, the Emperor slammed their foreheads together with all his might, causing blood to splatter in all directions. With his eyes burning, the man shouted a victory cry. Ban was also screaming in his soul, but this time from horror. Clutching his head, his only thought was why Excel was such a psycho. Remembering the novel, Ban thought of a beautiful day at the imperial castle. There on the parade ground, a little boy was diligently learning the art of swordsmanship. Young Blumharts praised the Emperor that he would soon surpass the White Dragon Knights, but the joyful boy could not believe it. The knight laughed, confirming his words. And the Emperor was beaming. He loved to study with Blumhart, and he really enjoyed fencing. In reality, Excel completely lost his temper while fighting with all his enemies. Standing on a mountain of orc corpses, he waved their heads and laughed. Ban considered it a completely senseless cruelty. As a child, Blumhart trained Excel in horizontal techniques and how to fight an opponent who is much larger. So one day the commander-in-chief knighted the young man Excel. All this flashed before Ban's eyes and upset him even more, because now the Emperor did not even remember all these lessons, but chopped up enemies like a butcher. It wasn't just blood that was trickling down the man's chin, but the fresh blood of a brutal murder. Still with the same smile, Excel wiped it away, and Ban realized that he was just a maniac. Tears streamed down the elf boy's scratched face, and he screamed with all his might. He cowered on the ground, trembling, looking at the mad Emperor and calling him a monster. The man froze, remembering the child. But the anger did not leave him. He thought that this was another enemy, and magic sparked in his hand. He tried to grab the elf. Suddenly, Renart stood in his way, covering the boy with her body, urging the Emperor to pull himself together. The man's magic gradually faded, and he spoke her name more calmly. The girl's gaze showed determination to protect the child to the end. A calmed-down Excel looked at her coldly and said, "Don't you understand? I don't want to be recognized. Why did you call me your majesty?" The knight blushed and pressed her hands to her lips, apologizing. Bowing, she continued to apologize, while the man said that it was unknown whether they would be able to use this cub. He didn't know anything. He probably wouldn't even find his way home. Huddled up in a ball, the little elf only repeated that he was afraid. Suddenly someone screamed, "Rondo!" Hearing this, the child froze, and his tear-stained eyes opened wide. Voices were heard in the night forest. It seemed to them that the baby was nearby. The boy's large, tear-stained eyes sparkled. Renard immediately realized that these were most likely his relatives, and Excel said, "He's useful, it turns out." The elven search party looked around. They were already close. The Emperor raised his hand to be seen and called them. The elf looked back and froze in shock. A strange company appeared before him, in the form of a man, a woman, and an elf, and the entire space around them was covered in blood. The rescue team screamed, and then Excel realized that he was also covered in blood. Panic gripped the elves. They thought that Rondo needed to be saved. And finally, the tired elf boy fell fast asleep in the arms of his fellow elf. A group of elves, Renard and the Emperor, sat in a spacious wooden hut. The elves asked for forgiveness for not immediately realizing that the people were sleeping Rondo. The chief elf was genuinely surprised that they killed the orcs with their bare hands, but Excel simply asked for something to wash his face with, which greatly shocked the commander. Angered, he repeated his request. Then the young elf finally heard him and brought a towel. With careful movements, he wiped the blood off himself, and the entire towel immediately turned blood red. Recognition flashed in the elf's eyes when he saw the Emperor's pure face. The Emperor only looked intently at the commander, who called him Magnus. This name shocked Excel, and he asked the elf again. Long-Eared said that he looked like Magnus, only a little younger. Now everything became clear to the Emperor, and he replied, "Magnus was my father's name." Joy lit up the elf's face. "So that's it? You look so much like him," he admired. Excel was surprised that the elf knew his father, to which the commander said that in the old days he had met him several times in this place. The elf recalled that his father sought a cure for a disease he called dragon inheritance, and that he was kind and courteous. Ban was pleased that Magnus was also looking for ways to suppress dragon blood. This gave him a chance to befriend the elves and speak openly about his goals. A smile blossomed on the elf's lips. He remembered that Magnus came in the same clothes as this man. He wanted to know how his father was doing. The Emperor's fist clenched the dirty towel, and he said that his father had died. This upset the long-eared man a little. He looked down and said that Magnus was a wonderful person. Such familiarity infuriated the man. He was already ready for a fight, but Ban cooled his ardor by asking him to listen to his father's friend. His next words shocked everyone sitting nearby, and Ban wanted to scream in panic. With a menacing look, Excel admitted that Magnus was the late Emperor of Rune. But this was not enough, and he continued to tell that he was the current Emperor of Rune, Exceltrian. Inside, Ban clutched his head in horror. He had lost control again. "Know your place, plebeian. It's better to take me to gospel. I have business with the great elven oracle," said the Emperor, which caused Renard to look surprised. She was a little frightened by such pressure, but she could not resist asking, "Your Majesty, weren't you planning to remain incognito?" Excel said that he didn't need it, which really shocked the girl. Horror was visible in the eyes of the elves from the words of the man, who did not understand how he could remain silent when these serfs spoke so familiarly about the late emperor. The emperor's anger grew stronger as he saw their surprised eyes. He jumped up in anger and started shouting, "They don't even teach you in your uncivilized village how to honor the emperor." A shudder ran through Ban's body from fear and admiration. He saw how proud elves fell on their knees before the stern emperor and thought that this was power. After some time, they finally found themselves in Gaspel, the capital of the elven kingdom, where they appeared before the elven elder. Gaspel is a city with a history of many thousands of years, he said. But due to the dominance of barbarians in the Bloody Forest, we are in danger, and the only people who have visited the city for thousands of years are he and his father. The elven lord sadly admitted that he had not even known that Magnus was an emperor. His father's name angered Axel again. He didn't want the elf to call him by his name. The emperor shuddered, then seemed to calm down a little, trying to say that he would send him to hell. But he said something else. Renart, standing nearby, looked at the emperor with incomprehension. Trying to take control of Ban's body, I almost said something I didn't want to. When the elder looked at the man with his magical vision, he realized that his blood aura was indeed strong. The elf continued the conversation. "I don't know what offended you so much, but I would first like to hear why exactly you came to our city. This is a simple precaution. We are fighting barbarians. Tell me, elf, is your head sitting well on your shoulders?" Excel threatened with a grin. The elder's hand reached to his throat in fear, and a shudder ran through his body. He had not expected such a question at all. The emperor continued, "You have not yet seen my anger because in anger, I would have already cut her off." This threat made an indelible impression on the elf. He seemed to feel the sword cutting him. At that moment, servants ran up to the elder, anxiously holding him by the shoulders. Tears flowed from Ban's eyes. He felt guilty that the emperor always spoke like that. The elf lord's gloomy gaze was directed at Excel again, who confidently continued to assert that the kingdom of the elves should become a vassal of his empire. The elder did not expect this. Excel's logic was simple. The elves were being raided by orcs. They would soon exterminate them, and therefore, it would be better to become his vassals. The elf lord jumped up in anger at these words. "Even if you are the emperor, there is a limit to what you can say. Gospel is protected by a magical barrier," he exclaimed. But Excel didn't back down. "The barrier is supported from the outside. If all the gospel elves die, your barrier will fall." The capital was indeed enveloped in powerful protective magic. In the form of a green dome, the emperor only asked if he had correctly unraveled the secret of this barrier. This was a serious blow for the elf. He could not understand where this man had learned all this from. But the man could only answer that he knew everything because he was the emperor. Ban thought with a smile that it was because he had read the novel. The gravity of the situation brought him back to reality. He frowned and thought that the elves would definitely die out if they did nothing. And if a war with the demons happened, an alliance with them would be very useful. The elder, shocked by the information that had been revealed, thought only about how this could have become known to people. The emperor confidently commanded, "Become my vassals, for we are a civilization with tens of thousands of years of history." For the long-lived elves, this was not a compelling reason. They had no intention of becoming vassals of an empire that was not even 5 centuries old. Excel, gloomy and focused, saw no difference in the centuries of history when total extermination was at stake. The elder's confidence wavered, but he could not give his consent so easily. With his arms folded across his chest and recalling the novel, the emperor urged the elves to make a decision and describe the events that could happen. "The barbarians of the Bloody Forest will slaughter you all, and that will be the end of your civilization." This made the elf think. He apologized and said that he could not make such a decision himself, and he needed time to gather a council. A completely fake smile adorned Excel's face. It seemed he was already ready to agree with this option. Of course, this made the elder happy, and he tried to prove that this question was really important. But Excel didn't care. With the same sinister smile, he raised his hand, in which a stream of magical energy lit up. The elf realized that it was pointless to continue the dialogue, fell silent and began to sweat from fear. In an attempt to calm the enraged emperor, he raised his trembling hands in a defensive gesture and said that he did not want to start a quarrel. Having extinguished the magic, Excel agreed with these arguments. He looked at the frightened elder with pride, thus the elven kingdom was subjugated. Now the emperor was giving orders and he needed the elf to convince the elders as quickly as possible. Lowering his gaze, the long-eared one said doubtfully that he understood everything and would do it. The man was not satisfied with this tone and, looking menacingly, he asked the elder again, The elf understood that he needed to be more respectful. Smiling and beaming, he said, "I hear and obey. I will convince the other elders at all costs. You can count on me, sir." This made Excel believe that he was going to send a messenger to Rune and send his knights for protection. Bowing deeply, the inspired elder could only obey the emperor. Having finally settled all the issues, the emperor got down to business. Renard's surprise knew no bounds. The man was still planning to enter the Emerald Ruins, leaving the girl to convince the elders. Excel's desire to enter the sacred ruins, which had been protected from outsiders for thousands of years, caused the elf to become insanely angry. A mad fire lit up the emperor's eyes. He asked again, was the elf really against it? The elder was not going to give up so easily, no matter what the emperor did. He would not be able to let him into these ruins. But Excel's lips only touched with a smile, as if he was deep in thought. The emperor, his eyes flashing and burning with fury, said that he was just a little angry. A red carpet flashed across the ground, and the elves, standing on either side, bowed, escorting the emperor to the entrance of the Emerald Ruins. Questions crowded in Renard's head. Didn't the elves say they wouldn't let strangers in? Why were they suddenly so willing to cooperate? But the emperor brought her out of her reverie. She turned around when she heard her name. His Highness had a letter in his hand. He handed it to the girl, saying that it should go personally to Duran, since the life of the elves and the existence of these ruins are connected with it. Renard's doubts never left her. She was worried that it was dangerous to be alone in the ruins. The entrance really did give off a creepy feeling, and the girl claimed that she knew these ruins well, as she had been told about them since childhood. Bowing, she asked the emperor to take her with him despite all the dangers. The wind swayed the trees around him, and Excel replied that he understood everything. Pure and faithful, like her father, the girl made a huge impression on Ban with her sincere care. The emperor smiled. He knew he had to go alone to find a cure for the dragon inheritance. Raising her head, Renard looked at Excel with hope. But her hope quickly evaporated when he said that if he was ready to die, then please do. The setting sun illuminated the smiling face of the emperor. "Those who oppose his will must die," he said. The frightened girl tried to prove to Excel that she only wanted the best for him. The arrogant emperor did not agree with her at all, because only he knows what is good for him. He finished, "You think you would have entered the ruins without weighing the risks?" These words helped Renard understand his mistake. The man's attentive gaze pierced the girl. He said that he was giving her a unique opportunity. The girl looked at the emperor, not understanding what he was talking about. Renard clutched the message to her chest like a precious treasure. His Majesty commanded her to return to the rune and carry out his orders, then she would receive his forgiveness. Excel raised his hand, threatening the girl. The man moved his hand as if separating her head from her body, showing what would happen if he got angry. The girl froze, not daring to move. Bowing to the ground, she obeyed and immediately set out to carry out all orders. The emperor's gaze was calm and commanding. He looked at the girl bowing before him and said, "It finally dawned on you." This conversation upset Bana. In his head, he apologized to her, shedding tears. It seemed to him that the orcish blood had provoked Excel, and he had become much more arrogant and hot-tempered. The sun penetrated through the treetops into the clearing where the emperor stood, and the entrance to the cave was no longer so scary. An elder approached him. Excel asked him about the treasures hidden in these ruins. The elf, of course, knew about it. He told a legend that in the depths there was hidden a miraculous elixir for all diseases. That's how it was in the story, Ban recalled. With the help of this elixir, it will be possible to cure the dragon's heredity. Having decided to prepare everything for his return, the emperor ordered to convince the elders and continue his father's research with the elven oracle. The elder did not argue with Excel, specifying when to expect him. This made Ban think. He remembered that the hero had spent a little less than a week in the ruins. That's how he answered, turning to the elf, who was concerned about what the emperor would eat and drink. But the man did not answer this, and the elder did not dare to insist. "My warriors will arrive in a couple of days. I sent an order to protect your territory around the barrier, so you can sleep peacefully." Excel gave his final instructions, and the elf could only thank him with a bow. In conclusion, the emperor ordered that no one be allowed into the ruins. An unusual wind touched Excel's feet from the half-open gate. He stepped forward, heading towards the unknown danger. The walls and ceiling of the cave were all covered with a layer of bright green moss. Transparent, sparkling crystal scatterings greeted the man in the cave. The moss was unusually bright and gave off a strange smell, but Excel's hand reached out to him, and he grabbed the nearest lump. He immediately swallowed it, trying not to smell it. The emperor's face twisted and he covered his mouth. The moss tasted simply awful. Shaking all over from the disgusting taste, Ban swallowed the moss, thinking that he would never have eaten such a thing if it hadn't been in the plot. He remembered the company of adventurers from Carl's and his henchmen, who quickly realized by the smell that it was poison. The emerald ruins were full of poisonous fumes. After rummaging through her bag, the girl realized that they were running out of antidote. Carl's looked at his companions with concern. One of them, named Scripps, fell trembling to the ground, unable to withstand the toxic effects. The smell throughout the cave seemed to become even stronger. Having stopped, Carl's became interested in the moss, which was not afraid of the toxic fumes. Chewing the moss with all his might, Ban tried to suppress his nausea. If he vomited, he might get poisoned. That left him no choice. Suddenly, a strange roar was heard. The cave shook. Excel concentrated. He saw giants made of stone in front of him. They were emerald soldiers. The Emperor frowned. It was impossible to kill them because the pieces would immediately grow back. Now, knowing all this, a smile blossomed on the man's lips, and his eyes lit up with a crazy light. He was going to test what these giants were capable of. Ban smiled in his soul. According to the plot, Carl's was clearing the cave. He was interested to see who was stronger. Excel's quick jerk almost made the man sick, but all he could say was for the Emperor to slow down. At this time, the sun was shining over the demon castle. On the huge throne in the main hall sat the demon general, listening to a report about Clune, whom he had sent to the imperial palace under the guise of the prime minister. His subject, bowing, said that the Emperor of Rune had beheaded Clune. This information shocked the general. He knew that Clune was an unrivaled werewolf. Unfortunately, the demon knew nothing about this, but he heard that it was simply the Emperor's personal dislike for the prime minister. Now everything became clear to the general. He had heard a lot about the Emperor's madness. All that remained was to send another werewolf. Now we must focus on the prophecy about the chosen messenger of light. This person will be the strongest antagonist of the demons, the general reasoned. He also ordered the redeployment of all werewolves of the Rune Empire to the temple of the God of Light, something his subject did not expect at all. The divine light just at this time touched Carl's. While still an ordinary boy, he already saw the beginning of his path, but the demons had already started hunting him. The stone blocks that were golems easily flew apart in the air, gradually disintegrating into small pieces, until only the sparkling central stone remains. Exil laughed madly as he mocked Carl E., air currents swirling around him. He shouted that he would destroy them all, confidently standing in the path of the stone giants. Magic was reflected in his blue eyes. The golems closed ranks around him, trapping the man in a stone prison. But a bright light illuminated the vaults of the cave, and a huge explosion blew the giants to pieces. Only stones fell to the ground, through the smoke. This didn't help either. The stones crashed back together. The Emperor just scratched his head. He didn't like fighting the orcs so much because they died too quickly. For Excel, this was a real holiday. He was happy that the golems would recover no matter how many times he killed them. Ban, not expecting this, was delighted by this scene. The Emperor stood in the middle of the cave and watched as the boulders turned into monsters again. A ball of wind was being formed in the Emperor's hand with the help of magic, and he was shouting that he had not played enough yet. Ban, overwhelmed with emotion, clenched his teeth and tried to pull himself together. It was becoming increasingly difficult for him to control Excel. Out of fear, the man felt as if he was in the mouth of a huge beast, and thoughts flashed through his head that if they got stuck here, the dragon's blood would rage. Ban's hand trembled, as if he had become accustomed to the Emperor's cruelty. He recalled that one of Carl's assistants had figured out how to hit the golems with their mana cores. While the broken giants were gathering, Carl's heard her. In the center of the golems' chests, there was a shining stone. Enveloped in magic, Excel flew up into the vaults of the cave. Now he knew what to do. After the battle ended, the Emperor, enveloped in a magical wind, froze with his eyes closed. A real storm was dying down around him. The man exhaled. He had to be careful or his dragon heritage would make him possessed. Having rested, the Emperor stepped further to the next entrance. Inside there was a huge poisonous pink lake in which some kind of animal was swimming. In order to cross this lake, Ban knew a clue. He had to saddle this beast, the bone eel, and hold on until it took him there. Excel managed to do it with ease. He didn't even have to hold on. The next hall was a swamp, inhabited by strange creatures, mudmen. Ban remembered which mud boilers did not sink when stepped on, and with this help they easily crossed the swamp. Now they found themselves in a huge hall with columns, the gatekeeper's hall. The Emperor was impatient to go deeper. He stopped at the stairs leading down. In the previous halls, everything was simple, but here he became wary. In the dark depths lived monsters that even caused a lot of trouble for Carls. An unusual mechanism was moving down the stairs from the darkness. The worried man immediately took out his sword. The metal blades rustled. A humanoid robot appeared before them. It was a complete surprise to Ban. He didn't know what it was. The huge lens where the head should have been lit up. The robot was analyzing its target, the son of the dragon, and in a mechanical voice it said, Dragon blood activity 25.8%. S. Rank blood aura user. The Emperor's frowning gaze fell on this creature. He did not understand his words at all. Future man, I greet you. I am the guardian of Zeta 0729. I guard this gate. The robot introduced himself. His name was unusual for Excel. Ban didn't remember that name from the book, but the mechanism continued to tell, Guardian Zeta 0729 has a service life of 714 days, about 2 years. I recorded the movement and rose. Finally, I can complete the task. A shudder ran through the man's body. This robot was in the book, but it was lying broken and smashed in the corner, and the travelers couldn't figure out what it was. When they examined it, they realized that it was not working and was not moving. Before anything happened, they quickly moved on. Everything came together in Ban's head. It really was the same robot. It's just that Carls got there 2 years later and the guard had already stopped working. The lens in the robot's head sparkled as he analyzed his opponent. I see that you have resistance to poison, man of the future. I will begin the task. Excel asked what the robot's task was. Starting task gatekeeper, the robot said, its lens glowing red. The gatekeeper had no intention of letting strangers in, his mechanical body filled with power. I knew this wouldn't end well, Ban thought with a frustrated feeling. In order to go further, it was necessary to overcome him, the guard clarified. This only made the Emperor smile. Everything became clear to him. A huge sword glowed blue in the robot's hand. Excel had never seen anything like this before, and he prepared for battle. Swinging its light blade, the mechanism jumped up, aiming at the man. The Emperor concentrated and blocked the attack. This shook the man. There was a lot of strength in the guard. Looking into the glowing red lens, similar to an eye, the man understood that this was a dangerous opponent. Retreating, Excel jumped away from the robot. From this attack, the gatekeeper was able to assess his strength, fighting ability, and the increased level of dragon blood activity. The Emperor's sword became coated with magic, and his opponent realized that it was dangerous. The man was overwhelmed with power. Ban had only seen such moves in fantasy. Excel had no other choice. He had to use all his magic to prevent the battle from dragging on. With a scream, he sent a huge wave towards the robot, sweeping away everything in its path. Light enveloped the guard and the blow struck him. From such a force, cracks appeared on the walls of the room. Now it was clear that the mechanism was covered with protection. By putting his hands forward, he blocked the blow. But the most powerful magic still made a hole in his defense. The robot was covered in scratches but still stood. The Emperor, who had spent half of his blood aura, looked at his sword. This blow had taken a lot of strength. All scratched up, the guard smoked and sparked, counting the damage that proved fatal, which led to the completion of the work. The robot's body was holding on with its last strength. Excel asked if he had any last words. There was a red ball lying on the palm of the mechanism. He held it out, asking her to take it. And then the gatekeeper fell to the ground, and the ball rolled along the ground. His last words were heard, "There is a secret door in these ruins. My eye will lead you there. In the very depths of the ruins there is a secret door behind which you will find the elixir of the ancients." The man looked up, the robot's voice gradually fading. When he disconnected, he only asked to find something and finish it. Ban couldn't figure out what was going on. He knew there was no hidden door in the plot. After the victory, the Emperor moved on, down the long staircase. Below he was met by another dark passage. Strange smoke was pouring out of there, and Excel even had to cover his eyes with his hand. In this hall of the sand cloud, there lived a giant worm, a very powerful monster. Moving under the sand, he suddenly attacked Carls and his companions. The round hall filled with sand was huge, and the exit on the other side was about 3 kilometers away. Magic flashed red on the Emperor's blade. He raised his sword, at the tip of which sparkled the destructive blood aura jade. The blow flew sharply straight into the sand, causing a huge explosion. Clouds of sand and dust rose up. There was a grinding sound, and a huge monster with terrible fangs appeared from the sand. It was a giant worm. Running to the side, Excel sent out another explosion. The Emperor moved forward, driving away the monster with explosions. His tactics were simple. He just needed to get to the entrance because the worm couldn't get out of the hall. Without much effort, Excel quickly ran to the exit. Out of breath, The emperor decided to catch his breath before the next door. He was filled with excitement before the last hall. Having calmed down, the man opened the door. There, on a small elevation, stood a green bottle, all sparkling and covered with precious stones. Excel slowly approached her. He grabbed the bottle and shook it, wondering if it really was the elixir, but then a sound echoed throughout the room. "Hello, if you can hear me, raise your hand." Ban looked around. This was also not in the plot, and the voice continued. "I am the system that controls these ruins. You might be surprised by my existence, because my essence is very difficult to understand." The emperor rolled his eyes. For the first time, the opinions of the body's owners coincided. This voice was too arrogant. "Do you want me to send you to hell for your insolence? I am the emperor, and I know everything." "You are some kind of operating system, right?" asked Excel. The system didn't expect that they would understand her, but then it remembered that he was actually a man of the future. The man was eagerly trying to find out what these ruins really were. In response to the question, the mysterious voice said that the ruins were created by peoples, and the operating system could exist for another 2 years. At these words, the emperor remembered the robot, who was also supposed to die in 2 years. The system continued its story. "This is how it should have been, but now I can fulfill my task, to transmit information to the man of the future, and therefore I will disappear." She told him about the ancient elixir that Excel held in his hands and its magical properties. This elixir was imbued with the magical power of our ancestors. By drinking it, you gain the ability to regenerate and neutralize any poisons, diseases, and injuries. For the emperor, the main thing was that he would cure the dragon's blood. The system confirmed that even a severed limb will grow back within 60 days. Looking at this unusual liquid, Ban again recalled the novel. There, Princess Scripps drank the elixir and turned into an invincible warrior. She destroyed enemies with ease. She was called the Goddess of Battles. Such was the power of the elixir. The glass of the bottle reflected the emperor's uncertain face. But there was no time to doubt. He had to solve his problems, and the entire bottle of elixir was drunk. Placing the empty bottle back on the pedestal, the man asked why the ancients didn't survive if they had such technology. The system couldn't answer this question, but only asked to pay attention to the creatures in the ruins. Indeed, these were truly strange organisms, Ban recalled. The system explained that even if you kill them, they still revive every 2 months. Their corpses contain many valuable components that will be useful in the war against the demons. This alarmed Excel. How could she know about the demon war? In response, the system said that it was destined to be so. Trying to find out the answers, he asked again. But it was useless. All that was left was to conclude that the ancients were destroyed by demons. The voice could not answer this either. He only said, "If you find some ruins and get to the deepest room, you will get answers. Just remember that you have no more than 2 years, otherwise the system stops working." Having said this, the voice fell silent. The emperor decided that the system's task was completed. Excel's hair stood on end as he suddenly felt strange changes in his body. His blood aura had been completely restored. Although it used to take 2 days, the elixir was truly amazing. As he looked around the hall, the emperor remembered that the robot had said something about a secret door. There was a small dark hole on the ground, and the man decided that this was it. When he inserted the golem's eye into the hole, a hole opened. The stairs led into a dark secret tunnel. There was only darkness around when a strange sound was heard and blue lights appeared above. "Welcome to our dungeon. It is only accessible to those who were able to defeat Zeta 0729, said another voice. A hologram of a robot suddenly flashed on the ground, and he offered to receive a superpower. "What ability?" Excel asked. The robot answered that it is a scan that helps to see what abilities others have. In the last battle, the golem actually used such an ability. Of course, this could be useful. The emperor agreed without hesitation. A hologram hand landed on the man's head and said that once the transmission was complete, the man would be transported to the surface. Then a terrible pain pierced Excel's head. His body shook with terrible sensations. He bent over, clutching his head. The emperor, having passed out, floated in the air. Before his eyes, in the darkness, the words flashed. System loading complete. New superpower added. Scan. The first thing he heard was someone calling him. Then he opened his eyes. The setting sun was shining in the sky. It turned out that an elven elder was calling him, who was asking with concern whether His Highness had come to his senses. The man did not expect to see him and tried to get up. The emperor's head ached terribly. He remembered his new ability. When the emperor finally stood up, the elf asked him in shock, "Your Majesty, what happened to your eyes?" But Excel didn't feel any change. They approached the river and the elder invited the man to see for himself. In the waters of the river, he saw that his previously blue eyes were glowing with an otherworldly light. Strange shimmers sparkled in their depths. This truly surprised the Emperor. A strange voice inside his head said, "Synchronization is complete." The ability implementation was successful. He turned to the elf, thinking that he had said something, but he was also surprised. And then a blue screen appeared in the air above the oracle, on which all the information was written: name, race, physical abilities, dragon blood, and magical power. Now Excel understood what the scan looked like. The voice also added that the testing was complete. The elf noticed that the glow in His Highness's eyes had disappeared, but the Emperor reassured the worried elder. In the reflection, Excel looked at his stats. The dragon blood was still at a high level. This worried him. But everything was fine. His head had noticeably cleared up, and there was no feeling that he would break out into anger. At least he had prevented madness. With a smile, the man decided to share the good news with the oracle. But then the elves ran out of the forest, shouting that trouble had happened. Kneeling before their leader, they reported that barbarians had attacked. The elder immediately began to find out what the signs were and from which side the barbarians were attacking. The elf admitted with horror that they were attacking from both sides and that the barbarians were different this time. Exeltrion raised his hand, interrupting the worried soldier. "Stop yelling! You should be ashamed. Our troops easily deal with the barbarians," he exclaimed, ordering a messenger to be sent to the Empire, asking for reinforcements. The Blood Forest elves in the story are supposed to be exterminated by 413, all because demons began to control the barbarians, giving them new powers. The enemies appeared much earlier. These events should have happened in 4 years. If it was because of him, Ban could not remain inactive. Having decided this for himself, he asked the name of the most confident elf, who introduced himself as Grickle. He resolutely ordered that he be taken to the attacked city. While they were running, the Emperor was thinking about battle tactics. A map was being built in his head. Excel thought about calling for help from Carl's ally, Princess Scrip of Saphigold. Ahead, houses engulfed in flames appeared, and the elf said that this was the city under attack. Everything around was ablaze. People were trying to defend themselves from the huge orcs. The Emperor ordered the children to be gathered in the city center, and Grickle ran to carry out the order. The magicians tried to put up a barrier to at least delay the enemies a little. Pushing off the ground, Excel suddenly rushed forward. He ordered them to leave, standing between the elves and the barbarians. The residents asked who it was, and he decided to save them. Furiously attacking the first orc with his blade, the man replied that he was their emperor. "Go to Gaspel immediately," Excel ordered. But the frightened elves said they could not leave. Then, turning around, with a wild look, he threatened to kill them. The residents could only bow and obey. They ran out of the city. The man made sure that no one remained. Now there were only orcs here, and the emperor could calmly deal with them. The barbarian attacked with a huge club, but Excel easily dodged it, and he himself went into battle, piercing the orc with his sword. He swung his blade quickly, cutting through his enemies. Blood splattered in all directions as the emperor struck down the barbarians without missing. A huge orc stood in his way, but the man decapitated him with a light swing of his sword. He ran forward and looked around. It seemed like it was all over. There were only body parts and weapons lying around. The emperor's foot easily crushed the orc's head. Bana was gripped by horror. He was not at all used to seeing such bloody scenes. Blood was dripping from Excel's boots. A rustling sound in the bushes made the man turn around. Someone tried to hit him with a huge paw, but the emperor managed to duck. The sudden attack of the possessed trolls shocked Excel, and he did not notice that another one was approaching from behind, swinging a club. A sharp blow sent the man flying, but he managed to stay on his feet, spitting blood out of his mouth. Anger filled the emperor. His pupils narrowed and his magic was spinning out of control. Ban tried to restrain him, but it was no use. Excel's anger was growing. But then something in my heart seemed to glow with a soft green light. Calmness slowly spread through his veins. Ban realized that the elixir was suppressing the fury of his blood. But this did not heal him completely. The emperor could still barely stand on his feet. The pain was really annoying to Excel. He still had a lot to do. And the number of orcs and trolls grew. The man realized that he could not fight in this state and that he needed to run, but his legs suddenly stopped moving. The emperor had no intention of turning his back on the enemy. He looked forward with a stern gaze. Trolls and orcs attacked him, and Banu could only scream in his head. A spear filled with blood magic flew out of somewhere. It lay down and pierced the attacking orc, raising a fountain of blood and stopping the attack. The spear, stuck into the ground, emitted powerful magic. Here, 3 people landed in front of Excel. These are the Knights of the White Dragon. Renard, Ingress, and Sis came to the rescue. The Emperor immediately ordered Ingress to take on the enemies from one side. He sent Sis and Renard to Maple Leaf City with orders to protect the elves. Instantly, they set out to carry out Excel's will. Ingress's face showed admiration for the Emperor. Now he resembled his father. The club that they were going to hit the knight with broke into pieces. It was the Emperor who covered Ingress, shouting at him not to yawn. Hearing him, the knight grabbed the spear. He looked ahead boldly and was going to crush the enemy. After the battle was over, the elves treated their wounds. The White Dragon Knights knelt before the Emperor, explained that there had been difficulties with the teleportation, and apologized for being late. The angry Emperor asked who was issuing permission to use the teleport in his absence. The Knights admitted that it was usually the Prime Minister, but the Emperor had killed him, and someone had to take his place. Ingress admitted that it was Sir Bios. In Ban's memories, he was a confident, fair-haired, middle-aged man. He had extensive connections. He was also interested in science, and he was a talented leader, president of the greatest academy in the Empire. In the book, he left the Empire by sacrificing his title, but this time he must become a loyal servant, Ban chuckled. He did not get angry with the Knights, for which they were very grateful. Looking through their characteristics with the help of his new ability, the man realized that they were very good. A serious Ingress asked if His Highness had been in the ruins. The Emperor said that he had been there and drunk the elixir of the ancients, and this information delighted his subjects. Excel also ordered them to stay and protect the elves. Turning around, he was about to return to the palace. A magical teleportation seal lit up in front of the man. The golden light of magic consumed him and transported him back to Rune. Immediately upon his return, the Emperor went to eat and at the same time invited Sir Bios to chat. The man offered some food, and the minister thanked him. He began to carefully eat the exquisite imperial dishes. Watching him, Ban thought that he needed to be made his own man at any cost. Bios was tormented by doubts, and he decided to ask whether he was worthy of such a position as Prime Minister. It was important to Excel that he deal with state affairs, but this seemed to surprise the minister. He argued that politics must have a specific vector, what to focus on, and who to support. But for the Emperor, these were stupid questions, and he appointed a Prime Minister to answer them. Bion bowed his head in agreement. Then Excel began to tell the latest news, that the elves had accepted the Empire's citizenship and the Emerald Ruins were now part of them. He ordered the monsters from the ruins to be used in preparation for war, to which the minister, surprised, asked what kind of war awaited them. In response, the Emperor told about the war with demons and that there was 1 year left before it began. Bion was shocked by such confidence. Of course, Ban couldn't say that he had read the novel many times, and he just said that he knows everything because he is the Emperor. Perhaps you have spies among the demons, the minister decided to ask, but Excel did not answer and left everything to Bion's imagination. The Emperor was not at all what the official thought. The man chuckled at this, getting up from the table and asked, "Did you also believe that I was crazy?" Sir Bion admitted with the utmost honesty that he truly believed this. But now, having bent his knee and was going to serve faithfully and truly for the good of the Empire, this softened the Emperor, and he decided not to punish the minister. The Saphigold Empire will soon send its ambassador, since the Blood Forest is their territory, said Bion, who was going to take over diplomacy. Only Excel decided to do it himself. The worried minister was not against it, but thought that it could be a declaration of war. Ban stated with confidence that there would be no war. Soon the ambassador of the Sapphire Empire arrived at the castle walls. This was a crucial moment. The man must not let Bion down and start a war. The door to the chambers swung open with a sharp kick. The man who entered, his face angry, began to shout, "You have upset the Saphigold Empire. We have heard about your madness, but do you really want war?" Shouting at the Emperor, he introduced himself as Barza and said that he would fight him to the end. That name, Ban's memories stirred, was the name of the 5th demon general. In the future, he will betray humanity and side with the demons. Excel grabbed the blade, intending to kill him. Rising from the throne, he easily cut down the ambassador. This shocked the minister because he thought that the Emperor would not start a war. Barza was mortally wounded. Walking calmly back to the throne, Ban thought in horror that this was the end. His subjects shouted that he deserved it for daring to insult the Emperor. Now that war was inevitable, Bion wanted the Emperor to send a letter explaining the reason for the ambassador's murder. One of the officials objected that Emperor Saphigold himself should bear responsibility for sending some scoundrel. Excel called them to calm down, saying that he would resolve the issue. And he called Bion, who came forward readily. In the Emperor's hand was a letter which he ordered to be sent to Saphigold. With a bow, the minister was about to fulfill the Emperor's will. Bayon did not return alone. He was walking to Exeltrion reading the letter. He thought that the ambassador should not have been killed, but surprisingly Saphigold only sent a letter and a girl. She was chained but beautiful, tall, with dark hair. Knocking on the Emperor's chambers, Bayon shouted that the envoy of the Saphigold Empire had arrived. The man immediately recognized the girl. It was Princess Scripps. She only bowed with a sad, emaciated face. In the future, this princess became an ally of Karl's. Already at the age of 7, she discovered that she had a dragon inheritance of great power. As she grew older, she lost control of herself and killed many people, and soon she became an outcast in her own country. This sad story really upset the Emperor. The outbursts of aggression were endless, and she decided to chain herself up. Ban looked at her and remembered that according to the story, she drank the elixir and was healed. His gaze became completely sad. He felt very sorry for the girl. Suddenly, the princess's eyes rolled back and she staggered, falling. Shouting for water, Excel ran up to her with concern. A glass of clean water was immediately served to His Majesty. With care, the Emperor offered it to the girl, who was so dehydrated that she could barely speak. But after thanking him, she refused. Excel asked to explain why. Scripps said that if you drink a lot of water, your strength will return and your dragon blood will rage. But the man did not retreat. He was confident that he could win. He ordered the maids to bring more water. In the letter, Bayon lamented that Emperor Saphigold was asking for the princess to be executed. But Excel decided that it would be better to make her a concubine. To the Emperor's surprise, the minister replied that this was impossible, and he explained that everyone in the Empire had heard about the princess's brutal murders, which had made her an outcast in Sapphire Gold, and therefore marrying her was a bad idea. This was familiar to Excel. He chuckled, remembering that every empire has similar stories. Bayon clutched his head and asked what His Majesty intended to do. After all, the last chance to end the war is to fulfill the conditions in the letter of King Magus Sapigolski, who asks to do whatever he wants with the princess. And the question of marriage is a long matter, the minister continued. Understanding this, Excel asked what to do with her then, which made Bayon incredibly happy, as he was immediately ready to give advice. Now free, Scripps sat in the summer garden watching the butterflies. Ban looked at her joyfully, that her healthy blush had returned to her. At least she looked like a human, Excel decided. This kind of treatment of his beloved heroine angered Ban. Noticing the Emperor, the princess immediately bowed in gratitude, and now the man noticed the chains on her hands. They were wrapped around her forearms like bracers, she wanted to explain. But Excel said that he didn't care. The main thing was that she didn't shackle herself completely, like before. The saddened girl asked what would happen to her next, to which the Emperor replied that the Prime Minister had offered to grant her a title. This surprised the girl, but the man explained that this was necessary so that he could marry her in 2 years. This news delighted the girl. She did not expect that Her Majesty would take her as his wife. "I accept you into my empire because you are strong," Axel admitted. Strong warriors are needed because the Rune Empire has the longest border with the demon world, which is growing in power, the Emperor said. But Scripps was unsure. You have so many strong warriors, your knights are legendary. The ability to analyze lit up the man's eyes. Her characteristics were high. To calm the girl, he said that he felt great power in her, but she replied that she had never been able to control it. Understanding the princess's concern, he said, "Stay close to me, and together we will go to war against the demons." Smiling, Excel complimented her, saying that she was beautiful enough to be his wife. Ban was ready to marry the girl right now. She should be proud of herself since the Emperor of Rune himself chose her, said Excel, which terribly embarrassed the princess. The Emperor himself blushed at these words, but Ban only laughed in his head. The man turned around and walked forward, calling the girl to follow him to the Imperial laboratory. He explained to the interested girl that the elven oracle would lift the curse from her. The words about curing the dragon's inheritance made such a strong impression on Scripps that she began to cry. Having said thank you again, the princess followed the man. The laboratory was filled with smoke. A concentrated elf in protective glasses leaned over the table. He dripped something into multicolored test tubes, checking the results. A thoughtful young man stood next to the oracle. The interested princess decided to come closer, and the Emperor remained to the side. The liquid in the test tubes began to smoke, and the scientists reported that the reaction showed a decrease in potential. The young man beamed and explained to the girl that in 4 days the strength of her dragon blood had dropped to 2%. This guy's name was Rugesta. He was a knight of the Order of White Dragons and defended his dissertation on the theory of draconic heredity. Smiling, he began to congratulate the princess and the Emperor. The dejected girl considered herself merely an outcast, and not a princess, Excel immediately began to clarify how many doses of the medicine the scientist could produce, to which he replied that it would last for about 30 days. But this did not suit the emperor, and the elf immediately began to prove that the necessary herbs grow only in gospel and in small quantities. He said that all the herbs of the gospel are needed, and that only a very small amount of the required substance is obtained from them. Excel decided to find out if these herbs grow in the Emerald Ruins, to which he was answered in the affirmative. He commanded them to go into the ruins and collect plants. Ru just bowed and obeyed the emperor. At the same time, magic was shining brightly in the temple. A girl of unearthly beauty sat in the center of a magical seal, and the power tousled her long hair in bright flashes. Priests in cassocks stood around, looking at this with admiration. When the magical light went out, they all headed towards the girl saint, trying to find out what she saw. "The gods spoke to her," she replied, but the priests wanted to know the details. "The one for whom the sword is intended will soon cross the threshold of the temple," so he said. The girl pointed to the sword hovering above the floor. Everyone was happy. Finally, a knight of light would be born. But one monk distinguished himself. He stepped forward, stopping them. It seemed to him that this was not a good sign, and that the future war would be even bloodier. And the saint confirmed this by telling about the war with demons. The Sword of Light and its mysterious master were the only hope. Right there, not far away, the teleport gate was activated. Exceltrion emerged from them, striding quickly forward. He was heading to the Temple of Light, which is located in Lowenheim, on the western border of Safigold, in order to meet Karls, who will remove the seal from the Sword of Light. And he will become an incomparable knight, and Ban must make him his ally, because the Sword of Light is the greatest weapon against demons. But Karl cannot cope alone. The war will wipe out many nations. This time, the man was going to change everything. He had a perfect plan. Peacetime would last longer and Karls would become stronger. According to the novel's plot, after 3 years, the Knight of Light will receive divine illumination in the temple. He is only 13 years old now, so if we start training him now, he will grow up much stronger. All these plans worried Ban. He knew that he couldn't cope alone. To find out everything, it was necessary to find the temple. But then there was a terrible roar, and the earth trembled. Smoke rose into the sky, and the man realized that it was all coming from the direction of the temple. Buildings were burning, people were running away screaming. However, the emperor fled towards danger. Rivers of blood flowed on the ground. The city was engulfed in flames. Excel froze in the middle of the street. A strange feeling came over him. There were demons in the sky, and a man was screaming in their clutches. The emperor looked at this in horror. The demon saw him and smiled maliciously. This made the man incredibly angry, and he was going to kill all the demons. This feeling of all-consuming hatred surprised Ban. Of course, he hated them too and had to kill them. But even when Excel killed the orcs, he was not so angry. The body rushed forward, towards the enemy before Ban could think. Magic shone in the Emperor's hand. Ban looked at the blood aura in shock. Every time this happened, Excel emitted a silver aura that helped him sense demons and caused a burning hatred towards them. Panic gripped the man. He couldn't stop it. Knights had already come out to defend the city. They were going to stop the enemies before they broke through to the temple. The Emperor already held the bodies of dead demons in his hands. He no longer had the strength to restrain himself. Accelerating himself with magic, he suddenly rushed upward. Another demon fell at the hands of Excel. He had no intention of leaving anyone alive. A mage from the infantry detachment, who had not expected this, appeared nearby. After scanning it, the Emperor realized that it was also a werewolf. The man had already met with them more than once, and the next meeting infuriated him. Cutting down the demon, he ran towards him. A silver aura followed the Emperor. The werewolf did not expect this. He thought that the city had been checked for the presence of carriers of this power. Holding the blade to the demon's throat, Excel asked, "Which of the people in the Empire here has the strongest silver aura?" The werewolf grinned and was not going to answer. The demon standing next to him answered for him, trembling. He admitted that on the entire continent there was only one such person. Rune Emperor Exceltrion said the demon as the man cut him in half. With blazing eyes and a sinister smile, the Emperor admitted that it was he. The man waved his blade and explained that the demon recognized him and was instantly killed. In fear, the werewolf Actus ordered the death of Excel, and the demons went on the attack. But the Emperor, swinging his sword with ease, did not even let them get close to him. He slashed at demons non-stop. With a smile, he realized that he didn't even need to see them. He felt everything. Suddenly, a spear flew from somewhere, but the Emperor managed to dodge, and the spear hit the demon straight. The enemy, covered in blood, fell with a growl. Now only Actus remained in the man's path. Excel chuckled. Did you really plan to break into the temple with such a small number? The werewolf's face was filled with fear. He did not believe that his brothers were killed so quickly. Looking up at the sky, he ordered the remaining demons to kill the emperor. Spreading their wings, they rushed at him. Dozens of spears were aimed at the emperor, but he could see perfectly well where they would strike. The silver aura truly delighted Ban. He dodged attacks effortlessly, as if he could see the future. He blocked the sword with a clang. The hand shot up into the air, and Excel grabbed the spear aimed straight at him. The demons couldn't understand what was happening. Even the werewolf was shocked by how he caught the spear. The emperor enveloped him in silver magic. Power crackled in the weapon as Excel swung, and with all his strength he sent the spear upward. Ban panicked and didn't understand why he threw it into the sky. With a grin, Actus thought the emperor had missed. The spear whistled into the crowd of demons, and then there was a loud explosion, and pieces of bodies flew to the ground. Ban and the werewolf were speechless in amazement. The emperor burst into laughter, throwing his head back as he looked at the falling parts of the demons and shouted, "What a magnificent view!" This gave Banu confidence, and he laughed too. Gritting his teeth in anger, Actus could only repeat, "How dare you?" Having pulled himself together, the demon ordered the summoning to begin. The remaining demons pierced themselves with their spears. The werewolf also plunged the weapon into his heart. This struck the emperor, he wondered. Are they all sacrificing themselves? Blood continued to flow from their dead bodies as if joining into one stream. It was spinning into an endless bloody spiral. Horror gripped Excel. He felt something dangerous approaching. He wanted to run away from there, but he heard someone's voices. The knights approached him, rejoicing at their salvation and the killing of the demons. The man glared angrily and drove them away, calling them serfs and plebeians. This attitude infuriated the knights guardians of the temple. The emperor had just said his warning when a veritable tsunami of blood erupted around him. It covered people who didn't understand anything. Unable to escape, they drowned in this bloody ocean. Shouts and pleas for help were heard all around. The emperor, standing on his feet, wanted to help them. But the blood suddenly turned into a river again and flowed. The knights screamed, trying to get out, but it was all useless. It was as if they were being sucked into the depths. When all the blood was gone, a mysterious black hole could be seen. Ban's skin crawled with fear. Blackness began to spread around the strange hole. The earth shook from such magic. A huge hand emerged from the black gate, and someone growled, "More!" Gradually, a body appeared, insanely large, all in folds of skin. Finally, the creature stood up to its full height, towering over Excel like a tower, and on its belly gaped a mouth full of fangs. The creature called itself Epicron and growled, demanding blood. "This is one of the princes of hell, the prince of gluttony," Ban recalled in panic. Not far away in the temple, deep underground. The saint and the monks bowed before the sword, feeling the earthquake. The girl closed her eyes and prayed to the god of light for salvation. And then the sword of light came to life, glowed, filled with magic. The saint opened her mouth and froze in shock. Her eyes rolled back and a scream erupted. The monks rushed to her aid, trying to understand what had happened. Standing up, as if under hypnosis, Liena approached the sword, saying, "I have been given an epiphany." One of the monks tried to stop her, shouting that the sword would kill anyone except the chosen one of light. But the girl said that everything was fine and grabbed the sword. The blade trembled in her hands. Waves of magic enveloped him, and the people standing nearby could not believe it. The amazed monk looked at this scene. Unable to understand why the sword did not reject her hands, Liena explained that God had chosen her and she must take the sword to the master. Then she headed forward towards the exit. The priests immediately decided that the chosen one was in the temple, but the girl replied that he was outside. The alarmed men tried to restrain the saint because there were demons there, but after apologizing, she rushed to the exit. Holding the sword, the saint ran down the stairs. She felt that if she did not find the chosen one now, many people would die. Chaos reigned in the burning city. A huge boulder flew past with a whistle and crashed into the tower. The mad giant stood before the emperor, throwing stones at him. He swung his arm, cutting through the air with a whistle, and he clenched his fist the size of a man. Epicron abruptly brought his fist down on the man, but he managed to jump aside. Covering himself with his hands, Excel decided that he had to block the next blow. A giant palm covered the sky above him, and she dropped down trying to slap the emperor, but he blocked it with his sword. There was a crunching sound. The man's hand couldn't withstand such force and the bone broke. From such a blow he slid further, holding on with the help of the blade. The power of the elixir healed his wounds, but the demon was much stronger. The prince of hell demanded food, liquid flowing from the mouth on his stomach. It splashed out in a huge wave. Excel understood that one more blow and he would be finished. The only way to escape this was to jump up. Having landed on the ground, he was immediately covered by a huge shadow. The Emperor turned around, not expecting the blow. Epicron saw him and, clasping his hands, struck him with all his might. The blow sent the man flying into the air. With a bang, he hit the ground. The road beneath the body was covered with cracks, and blood was flowing from the Emperor's mouth. The giant's hands were like two sledgehammers, and now he was heading towards Excel. He activated the power and looked at his skills. The monster was very strong. The Emperor tried to calm down and looked for a chance to win. To do this, it was necessary to hit its core, which was located in the mouth on its stomach. The knights came running, trying to protect the Temple of Light. They thought it was a huge fat ogre. The monster who turned around was really angry at such words. Blood gushed from his stomach. With screams, the soldiers drowned in it. They were sucked into the monster's huge, bottomless mouth. The Emperor sat down and gathered his strength until he felt it was time to act. The man pushed off the ground with force. Realizing that the monster was distracted, he aimed at the back of its head. Then a girl's voice was heard. "Catch it!" she shouted, and threw the sword at Axel. The Emperor, not expecting this, grabbed the blade in his left hand, intending to use it. Trying to activate it, he poured in magic. But the sword did not accept it but only attacked in response. The man screamed and fell to the ground, exhausted. He fell, landing painfully. Excel looked at the sword with confusion. He clutched his head and felt terrible pain. Words flashed through my mind. Synchronization impossible. Too high concentration of dragon blood. 37% chance of brain death. "What nonsense is this in my head?" cried the Emperor. The words kept coming up. Contact capability detected. Neural connections 14% synchronization. Neural connections partially severed. The elixir is part of the blood. The possibility of brain death is 9%. The man's head was bursting with pain. He was overwhelmed with information, neural connections, synchronization 20%. Congratulations. You know some of the functions of the demon hunter, also known as the Sword of Light. The girl anxiously tried to find out how the man was feeling, but he looked at her angrily and asked, "Is this a Sword of Light?" The saint responded with consent and beamed with joy. This horrified man, he could have died from this. Licking his lips, the Prince of Hell felt satisfied as he prepared to eat another person. Leaning on his sword, the Emperor tried to get up. It was a shame that he had missed his best chance to kill the monster, and he already raised his hand for a new attack. The giant was already hitting like that, and it was very difficult to avoid the shockwave. Excel had no choice but to use the Sword of Light. Epicron's open palm was right in front of him. He swung and hit her, and he ran on, and the monster screamed, "How dare you!" Blood gushed from his cut arm, turning into a river. But the Emperor cut her with his blade. He was not going to fall for it again. Epicron clenched his fist, preparing to strike. Then a golden glow of magic flared up around the man. It was Liena who helped him with divine power. The Emperor's eyes flashed. This was the last chance to break through to the core of the creature. He swung and hit it with all his might. The power of Exceltrion was incredible. The sword literally passed through the giant's body. The huge carcass fell to its knees. With a hole in his body, the giant was already dead. Ban, breathing heavily, wanted to get away from him. Suddenly, his body was engulfed in magic, and notifications flashed in his head. The elixir's effectiveness has been reduced to 0. Changes are occurring in your body. Pain shot through Ban's head and he screamed. The magic shone brighter and brighter. Something was happening to the Emperor's body. Long claws grew on the fingers instead of nails. The hands were covered with hard scales that tore the clothes. Scales also appeared on my legs, breaking through the dense tissue. The man's eyes rolled back. He couldn't stop it. When the transformation was over, Excel sank heavily to the ground. But flashes of magic immediately surrounded him. An inhuman roar erupted from the Emperor's throat. His mouth, complete with enormous fangs, gaped in a grin. Without even drawing his sword, he easily cut the dead giant in half. There was only one thought left in his head. He would kill them all. With his fangs, like an animal, Excel tore at the monster's flesh. It seems he tried not to leave a single piece of it, and then fell into darkness. Slowly the man opened his eyes. Dawn was already breaking in the sky when he came to his senses. The Emperor rose and looked around. All around were the bloody remains of the Prince of Hell. In Ban's memory, the only thing that remained was that his body had changed. Everything that had happened seemed like a vision. A voice came from the monster's head. "Pathetic human, you dared to kill me." Excel was surprised that he had not died yet. His one eye lit up. The giant wanted to say something else. Only the Emperor did not give in. mercilessly crushing the remains. There was the sound of hooves and the clanking of armor as the knights rushed to help. They stopped at the temple, ready to fight. The commander-in-chief drew his sword and asked, "Where did the demons go?" Standing in the midst of the bloody carnage, the emperor grinned. "Don't you see I killed them?" These words stunned the warriors because there was a whole army of monsters. On the soldiers' chests, a badge with 3 intertwined dragons glittered. The man recognized the sign. It was the Knights of Saphigold. He asked if the princes were with them. The warriors, not expecting such treatment, tried to find out who he was, but then a young man stepped out of the line and introduced himself as Prince Portro. To the soldiers' surprise, when the prince asked him his name, the man readily admitted it. When they didn't quite understand who he was, the man had to say that he was the Emperor of Rune, Exceltrian, and then get straight to the point, continuing, "I have a way to cure dragon inheritance." The prince seemed not to understand at all what the emperor was talking about. Then he turned around and got ready to leave. "As you wish, it's your business. Greetings from Scripps." But Portro stood in front of him. He dropped to one knee and said, "Forgive me, your majesty, I admit that I am guilty before you." The knights could not understand why the prince was lowering his dignity in this way. The commander was perplexed as to how it was possible to believe him so easily, and what if he was an imposter? But the prince was observant and pointed them to the emperor's sword. Of course, the knight recognized the Sword of Light, so the prince had no doubts, because before him was the chosen one of the God of Light. "No need for formalities," said Excel, for which the young man thanked him. His Majesty's offer to be cured of dragon blood was of interest to him. The fact that everyone believed it so easily surprised the emperor. Smiling at the pleasant words, he invited the prince to come with him. But before returning to Runa, he had to finish his business here. Servants in white robes emerged from the temple, and the same girl who had helped Excel was hiding behind one of them. Seeing them, he said menacingly, "I order Saint Leanna to appear before me immediately. You will not escape responsibility." This greatly frightened the girl. Trembling, she recalled how he turned into a beast and tried to understand what had happened. The novices were surprised that the emperor knew about Leanna, since she had become a saint only a couple of days ago. But he was not going to explain anything, and grabbing the sword, he demanded that the girl be given back. The high priest tried to find out what he wanted from the saint, but the ruthless emperor said that he intended to execute her. And in response to the question for what, he said, "For an attempt on the life of the emperor," but the priest shouted that this was impossible. The sword whistled, cutting through the air. An enraged Excel held a sword to the man's throat, threatening to kill him if Leanna did not appear. She was in a panic, but there was no other choice. Stepping forward, she prayed for the emperor to put away the sword, but he only called her to silence. Excel wanted to inflict on her the same pain that was tearing him apart. Ban cried, remembering how much pain it was for him, and the emperor only ordered that the girl would speak only with his permission. The frightened priest begged for mercy for the saint. Surprisingly, the man agreed, saying that he would have to do something. And he asked about the town of Prescio. The monk remembered that it was a small mining town north of Lowenheim. Lowering his blade, Excel demanded that the boy Carls be found there and made a novice. The question of why only angered the emperor. He was going to count to 5 so that the priest would make a decision, and he quickly agreed. The man assigned Prince Portro to guard Leanna. When they were about to leave, the girl wanted to say something about the battle. Of course, Excel couldn't allow this, and she, frightened, obediently fell silent. But the saint only tried to warn that one demon had managed to escape. Flying in the sky, the demon used disguise, turning into a human. But it took a lot of strength and his wings disappeared. He landed in some city on a small street. His trembling body didn't obey, but somehow he got up. There were knights around. They were looking for the demon that attacked the temple. He recalled with horror how he had seen the call of the Prince of Gluttony. With the help of the demon that had entered the man, he was able to leave. He didn't understand why the knights were still alive. In his memories, there was only one person who could defeat the prince. The demon shook his head. That was impossible unless there was a mistake in the summoning, or the offering was meager. Walking down the narrow alley, he hoped to find a new person to inhabit, as his body was on the verge of death. The demon planned to hide in the mining settlement and then return to his continent. Then a boy ran out from around the corner. The monster didn't have time to stop. He shouted, "Get out of the way!" The child didn't have time to break, but only cried out in surprise. And they collided, falling on the road. The demon was surprised at the strength of this child. Covering his eyes from the pain, the boy looked at the man he had hit and said, "This is my bypass route. How do you know it? Are you a local?" Of course, the demon couldn't answer the truth. He wanted to ask the boy something. "I'm Carl," the child interrupted. Such a sudden transition surprised the monster very much, but the boy continued to talk about himself, that he lived in a mountain village near the mines. Then the man decided to find out how old the boy was, and he calmly admitted that he was 13. Showing with his palms how narrow the street was, he asked to let him through. The demon seemed about to give way when the child asked his name. He also called himself Carls, which greatly surprised the child. And the demon showed his true face, licking his huge fangs. From now on, he said, this is his name. At the royal castle of Runa, the priest appeared before his majesty with a report that they had not found the white-haired boy and that the village was saying that he had disappeared. The emperor sat majestically on the throne. He was not too pleased with this news. Frustrated, Ban thought that he should have looked for Carls earlier. Then Excel suggested looking for him in the abandoned mines where he likes to play. However, the priest replied that they were looking there too, and begged them to give him a little more time to save the saint. The man scratched his ear and was not at all worried, because he was going to postpone the saint's execution for a while. The priest even rose up in surprise, not believing in the emperor's mercy. And then he bowed again with mad gratitude to Excel. But he also had an order for the priest to find Gorta, the son of the Launheim blacksmith. The monk stood up and tried to understand why this boy was needed. The emperor was going to train him for the Order of the White Dragon. The man also ordered to prepare a place for the portals. Before leaving, the monk wanted to talk to Liena, but the emperor said that she was in prison and he would pass on his words. At night, it was hot in the dungeon, like in a bathhouse. Excel went deeper and deeper down. Ban had no desire to go to this steam room. He stopped near the cage with the saint. She seemed to be dozing, but when she heard footsteps, she instantly woke up. Jumping to her feet, the girl greeted the emperor, who wanted to ask a question. He asked, "Why did you give me the Sword of Light?" She should have known he wasn't a Knight of Light, so why did she do that? Liena apologized and swore on her honor that she had no choice. She had a vision, she said, which greatly interested Excel. A few days before their meeting, the girl saw a child, the future Great Knight of Light. However, then everything plunged into darkness, and she saw that his destiny had changed, and the Chosen One no longer belonged to this world. In a panic, Ban thought that Carls had died, but the saint only knew that the Chosen One, who should be pure in soul, had lost this purity. Someone had led him astray, the emperor realized with horror. His future was not in the world of people, but in the world of darkness, Liena said. Ban couldn't even imagine what had happened to Carls, but the man was still surprised why she decided that he was the next candidate. And the girl told him about a new vision where His Majesty was fighting demons. Liena felt that the emperor's compatibility with the ball was weak, but it was there, so she had no choice but to give up the sword. This made Excel angry. She almost killed him because she thought that he was compatible. The girl, trembling in fear, begged not to be executed, but the man pulled out his sword. Falling to her knees, she begged for mercy and called upon the gods to witness that she did not want to kill him. The air was cut by the swing of the sword, but it was not Liena's body that was cut, but the dungeon lock. She looked at him in confusion, not believing that she had been given a chance. Putting away his blade, the emperor walked towards the exit. He admitted that in the realities of the coming war, he could not waste his talents. The girl, not expecting such praise, walked behind her. Excel was going to use her abilities. Feeling insecure, she said that she was completely inexperienced in magic, and yet she intended to serve the empire unquestioningly. The thoughtful emperor only said that he would discuss with the knights how she could help. But Liena was already happily circling around him, trying to prove her usefulness. The man walked slowly up the stairs, but his thoughts were overwhelming him. He must find Carls as soon as possible. After some time, the emperor and Princess Scripps were sitting in a large room on soft sofas, and the saint sat on the floor. The emperor looked at her and was surprised why she did not get up from her knees. She explained that she was a sinner and did not dare sit next to him. But Excel convinced her not to embarrass herself and to sit on the sofa, or at least take a chair since she wants it so much. She stood up and walked with shaking legs to get the chair. Smiling, the man introduced her. "This is the saint from the Temple of Light, now a citizen of the Empire." The unsmiling princess said that her older brothers had mentioned her in letters, and she had heard about her great talent in white magic. Surely the emperor remembered how she had strengthened him with magic and helped him defeat the demon. Scripps was concerned that, unlike the saint, she was of little use in His Majesty's affairs. But Excel reassured her, telling her to focus on her studies and asking how training was going. The princess immediately brightened up, blushed, and said that Sir Ingress was very kind and often gave compliments. The emperor immediately asked what kind of compliments he gave. "He's confident that I won't lose my cool during a battle," the girl admitted. But Excel wasn't pleased. He only said that she was probably delighted with these compliments, to which Scripps replied that for the first time, someone spoke to her with kindness. Ban thought angrily about what Sir Ingress was doing there instead of teaching, but the girl exclaimed that she was training with all her might. And the man remembered that this was indeed so, Ingress reported to him. He beamed with happiness as he told how masterfully the princess controlled the aura of blood, even though she had not even been trained in this. That during the training battle, he felt as if it were a real battle. She, like His Majesty, also uses the power of dragon blood. The Emperor decided to check whether Scripps had actually used the power of dragon blood in her training, and she admitted it. She also admitted that even with this power, she was far behind the White Dragon Knight. Then, Excel asked if she was losing control, but the girl said that she had learned a method to partially awaken the power. This impressed the man, who himself was having a hard time maintaining control thanks to the elixir. Here the Sword of Light standing nearby, leaning against the sofa, began to shake and fall. In an instant, Liena rushed towards him. She grabbed it and handed it to the Emperor, who said, "And you are always on guard of the sword, I see. Just don't throw it next time." Liena noted that protecting the sword is the meaning of her life. Pulling out the blade, he looked at his reflection, activating the scanning ability. In addition to the usual inscriptions about his powers, a new, incomprehensible line appeared, which he saw in the Prince of Gluttony, Transcendence. There was a strange hyphen at the end that Ban decided to click on. Additional information has been revealed. Characteristics of the Transcendence attribute: Chaos, rank 7%, skills, spatial distortion, gluttony. While reading, Ban tried to understand what it was all about, but the system itself gave him a hint. Transcendence is a unique skill that violates all the laws of the universe. The man, surprised, exclaimed out loud in question, which shocked the girl sitting next to him. He explained that someone had spoken to him. Liena remembered that there were legends that the Sword of Light spoke to its owner, and other people could not hear it. Having demanded silence, the Emperor concentrated, closing his eyes. "Can you hear me?" he asked, and immediately received the answer. "Yes, I am connected to your consciousness." Ban immediately thought that the sword could read minds, and it confirmed it. Many images of what had happened appeared before the man. The sword showed his past. Such power amazed Ban, and he decided to check if the sword really showed everything. He then showed how the man dropped it, laughing. Ban apologized. He became interested in finding out why Transcendence appeared. Many images flashed around Ban. Sword replied that according to the data, this appeared because he managed to defeat a creature with such an ability. What does it give? Ban wondered. But what he was told was, the effectiveness of these abilities will depend on their level. But he was still curious about their effects. They answered him in the same detail. Space distortion. Moves objects in space and can be used as a shockwave. The man remembered that the Prince of Gluttony did this. This kind of use of space distortion is only possible after reaching a certain level, the sword admitted. But Ban was unclear how he could then use the ability. In response, he heard, "You can try it right now. Stretch out your hand and imagine that you are distorting space." The man immediately followed the advice, extending his hand. The space in reality seemed to spin and crumple. Scripps jumped up in horror, screaming to His Majesty. The saint also froze, realizing that space was being distorted. Excel calmed them down by pointing his finger. "Nothing special," he said, stretching his hand after such magic. Windows. With information about Transcendence flashed around, the sword was going to notify the Emperor about the status of Transcendence, the aura of blood and the content of the elixir. Carefully looking through the information, the Emperor wondered if Karl had seen it too, and that was why his abilities had increased so much, but the sword did not understand the question. Then the Emperor remembered that he was not acquainted with Charles and knew nothing about him. The windows kept popping up. "I am an integrated system for weapons against demons. 80% of my functionality is blocked. To get access to 100%, you need to go through one more ruin," the system explained. The man remembered the terrible pain he experienced during his first sanitization. Having calculated everything, he realized that since 20% had opened in the first ruins, he needed to go through 4 more. Lost in thought, Excel forgot that he was still not alone in the room. The girls looked at him in surprise, not understanding who he was talking to. Feeling their gaze, the Emperor came to his senses. Scratching his head, he admitted, "I hope I don't look like a crazy person." Hearing this, Ban thought that it was only thanks to him that no one had yet realized that he was crazy. Liena decided to clarify whether he would go to the ruins alone, and the Emperor said that he was going to the ruins of the White Heliotrope, The girl wanted to help because she knew a priest who often went there. Then the man decided to invite her with him. The princess remembered with excitement that the ruins had been under restoration for more than 3 years. The emperor wanted to answer, but he was interrupted. An urgent message arrived. The door swung open as Excel ordered them in. Prime Minister Beos bowed and apologized as he reported. But then he saw Scripps, saying that she looked much healthier. The girl smiled and thanked him. Next, his gaze fell on Liena, who was already about to introduce herself, thinking that no one knew her. But Beos greeted her with a smile, recognizing the famous saint and introducing himself. The touched girl bowed deeply and said hello. The emperor waved his hand and asked for the report to be read out, and the minister began to talk about the ruins that he had been ordered to inspect. The heliotrope ruins will become available in 4 days, and invisible golems live there. The crystal ruins have already been looted, and it will take a month to restore them. This news shocked Liena, because she thought that the Hunters Guild rarely changed its plans. Beos boasted that the Empire's influence extended across the continent, and that even hunters couldn't refuse them. And the girl immediately wanted to know how he convinced the guilds. To this, the minister reported that he had met with the leaders and made it clear to them that they bore personal responsibility and would face the emperor's wrath. This approach delighted the girl. She knew that His Majesty's threats worked wonders. The minister also added that he used the church's influence and said that the priest would refuse them services. Even Excel praised the man who tried so hard because it wasn't even part of his job description. The minister was flattered, although he didn't like intrigue. But he did everything possible for the sake of the goal. What was the purpose of this? The emperor was surprised. And Beos explained that it was all part of a grand plan. And now everything was clear to him. The inspired prime minister explained that such a blow to the demons would send a signal to the entire world that the Rune Empire was a stronghold in the fight against the underworld. Liena was stunned by such obvious flattery. Who knows how His Majesty would react? But the man even liked it. He noted the minister's wisdom. And Ban was also surprised that it worked. Smiling, the princess appreciated Excel's ability to appoint the right people. The men showered each other with compliments, and the saint was even a little frightened of the minister. She trembled as she recalled the angry emperor. And this man spoke to him so easily and threatened the hunters' guilds. Getting up from the sofa, Excel warned Liena that she was going with him to the ruins, which greatly excited the girl who jumped up after him. She didn't think that they would leave right now. He also added that they would be accompanied by a knight, and Scripps asked if she could go with them. In response, the emperor said, "You have something to do." The girl decided that he was talking about training. However, the man was not talking about this. He was instructing her to resolve disputes with the Sapphire Empire. The princess was saddened by this. She did not really want to meet with her relatives, but she could not disobey. With a mad grin, Excel turned to Liena and threatened, "It's your turn to prove yourself, get ready." The girl was horrified by this. At the same time, in the Demon Kingdom, which was once inhabited by people. However, after the war with the dragons, 6 demonic principalities were formed there, and everything created by people was destroyed. Since then, demons have been coming to Earth and trying to take over the world. But the Rune Empire always thwarted their plans, but the demons did not give up. They called upon the general and he turned the demonic state into a military stronghold and began to seize lands. Before the throne of the general, who was surprised that his subject had returned alone, a trembling Diklu bowed deeply. "Everyone was destroyed. You summoned the Prince of Hell and you don't even know what happened next." The general continued to get angry, to which the demon tried to justify himself. However, this only further angered the commander-in-chief, who shouted about the destroyed core, which they had obtained with such difficulty. He even jumped up from the throne from such emotions, shouting, "There is not even a response left from him. You know what this means?" The destruction of the Prince of Hell struck Diklu. "Someone broke his avatar's core," the demon said. He explained that if the core were saved, they could summon the prince again, but now this was impossible. Diklu tried to justify himself because the real body was still in hell. But the general became angry. How could the demon not know? Because now the prince would not be able to incarnate on Earth. His eyes flashed. He was truly angry. The Prince of Gluttony is one of the few who has a good relationship with the earthly demons. What should I tell him now? Go back to hell and ask for another core? Trembling, Diklu muttered that he wouldn't dare. "It takes 100 years to make a new core," exclaimed the general, which left his subject incredibly stunned. Approaching the trembling body, he said, "You could have collected the core and delivered its fragments. It was your duty." The demon jumped up in horror, trying to say something in his own defense, as huge fangs flashed right before his eyes. They dug right into the neck. Diklu began to deny it, saying that he was not alone. But the general drank more and more blood as he clung to him. Having thrown down the demon's body, the drunk emperor said, "I adore human blood. You took the body of a man, but there is no use in saving him." Clutching his wounded neck, Dickel reported the attack of the mad emperor. This information really infuriated the general. Grabbing the demon by the chest, he demanded to know if Exeltrian was there, but he had already passed out. Walking around the room, the demon wondered why the emperor was near the temple. Did he know their plan? Another demon entered the room and tried to calm the lord. "We cannot be sure, but we have lost a large number of scouts." A new source of information was needed, he said, and the general agreed, intending to use a spy in sapphire gold. He admitted that he had indeed rushed and lost his patience after the failure in the bloody forest. Irritated by these failures on behalf of the emperor, the general decided to go into battle himself, and the subject could not argue with him when suddenly groans were heard. The child's body, occupied by the demon, came to life. His fingers trembled slightly, magic flared, and part of the boy's light hair turned black. The commander-in-chief grabbed him by the shirt and tried to find out where Exeltrian was. Dark stripes appeared on one side of the man's face. He opened his eye, which was glowing with a scarlet light. The ruler looked at him, stunned. The boy became his blood relative. The demon standing nearby could not believe how the werewolf became a vampire and tried to understand what had happened. And the general said that the child regained control of his body and was transformed by a vampire bite. The boy was breathing heavily, holding his throat, and the demon was surprised how the man had driven the werewolf out of his body. Then the milord explained that his soul was crystal clear. Carl's red eyes widened as he tried to find out where he was. The general bared his teeth in a smile, and he greeted the boy, calling him brother. Looking at his changed body, the child did not understand at all how he ended up in this place. The demon looked at him and asked if he had lost his memory. In Carl's memories, he was in Lowenheim. The general extended his hand and placed it on the boy's face. The magic penetrated his memory. The demon said, "You don't remember anything. Now you are a vampire." He asked his name, and the boy, no longer understanding anything, answered that his name was Carl's. Introducing himself to Dickel, the vampire lord said that he was now his master. The hypnotized child only asked what he should do. "You will fight and conquer with us," the monster admitted, to which Carl said, "That's interesting." Night had fallen in the forest when three people stood frozen at the entrance to the ruins. These were the majestic ruins of White Heliotrope. On the continent of Iroth, these are the very first ruins discovered by man. Many hunters have tried to explore them, but in vain, because invisible golems live there. You can't enter them in a large group because the ruins are so deep that provisions run out towards the end. But attempts are still being made to this day, because there are many heliotropes hidden in these ruins. These stones are used to decorate weapons and armor to make magical items. It is a rare and valuable stone. But the most valuable thing in these ruins, Ban said with a confident look. "It's not hard for you," the emperor interrupted, which angered Ban. But the tall girl next to him replied that it was not at all difficult. Then Excel asked her, "Aren't you surprised that I use you, the Knight of the White Dragon, as a porter?" However, the girl only smiled and said that she used to be an ordinary miner, and strength is the only thing she has. Smiling, the man didn't let her belittle his abilities. "You're playing poor. It's not for nothing that they call you the she-bear of the Dimble Canyon." The saint walking next to her was struck by such a nickname. She even imagined an enraged she-bear. And the emperor recalled rumors of how the girl single-handedly defended an entire village of miners. He admitted that his father loved to talk about her exploits, which surprised the girl. "I've adopted his attitude towards you," Excel clarified, and she lit up with such an honor. Touching the wall, the man asked Elim what she knew about these ruins. This question seemed to embarrass the girl, but she immediately smiled and said, "I know that they are called the ruins of White Heliotrope." Laughing, she artlessly admitted that she didn't know anything else, and the man even doubted why he had taken her. "And yet I decided to ask differently. You are a miner. Do you know the properties of heliotrope?" The girl knew that it glowed in the dark. Ban just nodded his head. "This is the key to the ruins." When suddenly he was interrupted again, Liana leaned over tiredly, asking to stop and rest. Another interruption infuriated Ban. The man said out loud, "We were resting 3 hours ago." Clutching her heart, the saint complained that most people get tired after 3 hours of walking, and that she was not a warrior at all. Looking angrily at the girl, the emperor suggested that she return to prison since she was so tired. Bowing to the angry emperor, she apologized. However, returning to the dungeon no longer seemed such a bad option to her. At least it was just hot there. Turning away, Excel said, "We'll rest when we reach the entrance to the lower floor." Although this angered Liana, she couldn't contradict the emperor. Then the man suggested that she use white magic to strengthen her powers. This opportunity surprised the girl. After all, the priestesses told her to use white magic on herself only in extreme cases. That was true. Excel knew that white magic increased its power in proportion to its original physical strength. Therefore, it would be more effective to use magic on Elam. Only the Emperor was not concerned with moral dilemmas, and he ordered Liana to take care of herself. The girl immediately began to use magic, and a golden light enveloped her. Happy that she now had gained strength, she rushed after her companions. After a while, they stopped to drink water. The girls carefully collected various ingredients. They went very deep. The torch barely dispersed the darkness. A strange gate with a human face appeared in front of them, and it was immediately clear that this was the entrance to the lower floor. Looking around, Elam remembered how many hunters turned back. They read the messages left on the walls with horror. Only death lies ahead. Curb your greed. Invisible golems are invincible. I lost all my friends here. Standing in front of the door, the Emperor gave his final orders. Liana, stay close to us. No matter what happens, Elam, leave everything and take only a bag of white heliotrope. Opening the gate, the man entered first. It was very dark inside, and there was no way to light a torch, as this would attract all the golems. Elam stepped forward, scattering heliotrope powder, which helped to clear the darkness a little. Explaining his plan, Ban felt like a teacher to ungrateful children. Suddenly, footsteps were heard nearby. This made the girls and the Emperor wary. Excel grabbed the bag of crushed heliotrope from the girl. He threw the crumbs sharply into the air, and then something began to appear before their eyes. It was camouflaged with the help of light magic. Without a second thought, Elam jumped on the golem floating in the air and grabbed its leg. But the enemy extended his hand forward, on which a dangerous light began to glow. The girl's companions cried out in warning, and a beam burst from the golem's hand. It was aimed directly at Elam. The blow sent smoke into the air, and the Emperor and the Saint could not see if the girl was okay. There was a gaping crater on the ground next to Elam. It seemed she barely dodged it. The golem's hand was charging with magic again, and he was about to shoot. The girls were about to use the powder, but the Emperor remained silent, looking at the enemy. Pushing off, he jumped towards the ceiling of the cave. With a swing of the ball, cutting off a huge piece of heliotrope. Right there, before the stone fell, Excel applied distortion to it. Under the influence of magic, the crystal began to crack, disintegrating into small pieces. Dust enveloped the golem, and the team saw it. The Emperor easily jumped along the walls, heading towards the enemy. But he was already prepared to attack. The shot hit the man precisely, and the girls screamed with alarm. But Excel was also strong. He broke the beam with his sword, and he cut the golem in half. So he broke through without any difficulty. When the Emperor landed, fragments of the golem and heliotrope flew from above. Worried about his majesty, the girls were already running to him. Having calmed them down, Excel said that he was safe. The moon shone above the castle in the demon world. A boy stood by a huge mirror with gargoyles. He looked at his changed body in panic. Until now, the boy could not understand what was happening, how the monster did not eat him. The memory of it gave him goosebumps. Calming down, Carls tried to remember what happened next, but he only remembered how he woke up and turned into a vampire. His heart no longer beat. The eyes became red with a vertical pupil. It seems like all strength has left the body. Carls walked in circles near the mirror, thinking that this was all definitely because of Diclarin. Until now, his influence has been very strongly felt. The boy walked up to the torch, bending his face over it. Flames engulfed his body. Carls was not going to blindly obey the demon in everything. It seemed the vampire's words had no effect on the boy. He laughed joyfully, realizing that the demon had easily told him everything, believing that he could control him. Remembering the situation where everyone on the way bowed to Diclarin, one could guess that he was the leader of the demons. The most powerful demons did not dare raise their heads when they saw him. He crouched down, imagining how difficult it would be to escape. Carls thought sadly that he should not have gone to Lowenheim to explore the mine, but then he remembered why he did it at all. It was as if someone was calling him from there. In his loneliness, it seemed to him as if the gargoyle on the mirror had spoken to him. The boy even shouted at her, trying to figure out what to do if his pretense was discovered. Having threatened the statue, he decided to speak about himself for safety, and the statue seemed to be asking if he could leave. But Carls couldn't because he didn't even know where he was. And even if Diclas escaped, he could track representatives of his race, so he would find him immediately. Besides, the vampire is incredibly strong, and someone stronger was needed for protection. Carls knew that in order to be freed, he had to find such a person.